Center for Investigative Reporting. We talked to several veterans and took some of their grievances to VA Secretary Eric Shinseki. Watch a preview of that interview on our homepage and look for the full report tomorrow. And on Making Sense, an argument for why lower tariffs on foreign goods help, not hurt, American producers. All that and more is on our website, newshour.pbs.org. Ray?
And that's the News Hour for tonight. I'm Ray Suarez.
And I'm Judy Woodruff. We'll see you online and again here tomorrow evening with Mark Shields and David Brooks, among others. Thank you and good night.
Major funding for the PBS NewsHour has been provided by BNSF Railway.
The William and Flora Hewlett Foundation, working to solve social and environmental problems at home and around the world.
And with the ongoing support of these institutions and foundations. And
this program was made possible by the Corporation for Public Broadcasting and by contributions to your PBS station from viewers like you. Thank you. You're watching PBS.
KQED thanks our members and community partners.
Good evening, everyone. Welcome to the Capitola City Council meeting. We're very happy you are here tonight, and we're very happy if you are at home watching. Thank you for taking an interest in the city business, and please feel free to call us or email us anytime with your thoughts. And the first item is the roll call, please.
Councilmember Norton?
Here.
Councilmember Story?
Here.
Councilmember Bator?
Here.
Councilmember Termini?
Here.
Mayor Harlan?
Here. Will everyone please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. First item is a presentation, and can I ask Greg to please come up? We have a wonderful history here in Capitola of having a lot of citizens that have been involved for many years in many different committees. And Greg Tedesco served on the Capitola Commission on the Environment, and we appreciate his service there very much. He has a unique perspective. He's been in Capitola for a long time, done a lot of different things, served on the Finance Committee previously and lots of other committees, and we'd like to thank you very much for your help here. Thank you very much. Thank you. Okay, the next item is a report on closed session from Attorney John Barasoni.
Thank you, Mayor Harlan. The items that the council discussed in closed session this evening are those listed on the first page of the council's posted agenda. We had 4 items to discuss. First of all, the council met with its labor negotiator, Lisa Murphy, who reported to the council on ongoing negotiations with the 2 Capitola Police Department bargaining units, the POA and the police captains. Lisa provided the council with a status report on those negotiations and took instructions with regard to ongoing negotiations, but the council took no reportable action in closed session. The council heard from the city manager and the city attorney in connection with the Capitola versus Lexington insurance case, where we're required to sue our insurance company to get coverage for the property damage we sustained in the pipe incident of March 2011. We provided the council with a status report on that matter, and the council gave us instructions with regard to the ongoing prosecution of that case, but took no reportable action in closed session. Similarly, the council met with myself and Assistant City Attorney Adair Paterno regarding the Schrodel versus City of Capitola case concerning relocation benefits for a number of the former Pacific Cove residents. We provided the council with a status report on that lawsuit, and we took instructions with regard to the ongoing defense of that suit from the council. Council took no reportable action in closed session. Finally, the council heard from the city manager with regard to the real property negotiations between the city and Soquel Creek Water District for a portion of the McGregor Drive property owned by the city of Capitola, which the Soquel Creek Water District would like to acquire a portion of that property so as to build a necessary pump station. Again, the council received a status report on the negotiations, and city manager Goldstein took instructions from the council with regard to ongoing negotiations. And that's the end of my oral report.
Thank you very much. The next item is additions and deletions to the agenda. We do have a revised agenda tonight on our table, and the item that was added was item 12, additional materials, A, communications from the public, and we have a number of additional materials here on our desk tonight. Any other additions to the agenda? Deletions to the agenda? Then we'll go on to public comments. This is a time for anyone in the public to talk about any issue that's not on the agenda. If it's on the agenda, please wait till we get to that item, but you're welcome to come up, and you have 3 minutes to give us your thoughts about whatever you like. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. I'm Pam Greninger, former city clerk and Capitola resident. Thank you for all your hard work. And I just wanted to, I was really excited to learn the Capitola Chamber acknowledges different people every year for their community awards. And I just found out yesterday that Lisa Murphy is our Woman of the Year. And I just wanted to personally congratulate Lisa. I know what a hard worker she is, and it's really, I was a former Woman of the Year, so I know how you feel, and it's very special, and I just wanted to acknowledge that. I also understand our police department is getting an award, very well deserved, and we're really lucky to have such a wonderful police department. And last but not least, a very dear friend of mine and co-worker for many, 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 many years, Susan Westman, who has been with the city off and on
Forever.
What, 35, 40? Anyway, we started working together just maybe very close. And anyway, I understand she's been here as a temporary community development director, having just stepped to the plate after we lost Derek Johnson. And she's done a wonderful job, and she's a great asset not only to the city working here, but also to the community. And I just wanted to acknowledge Susan and thank her for all her work and many years of service to the city of Capitola.
Thank you very much, Pam. Good evening.
Hi, I'm Marge Hansen, local resident, and lately have had some serendipitous encounters with the police department, other than my usual calls in complaining about my neighborhood. And actually one was because of a phone call. There's a constant annoyance in my neighborhood, and I take umbrage at it. And while I was on the phone, the dispatcher asked me, is this an emergency? And I said no, and he put me on hold, and obviously had a whole lot better things to do than talk to me about this ding-dong in my neighborhood. But came back on the line, handled it, had contact with the officer, and where I live, I hear all the sirens, every which direction that they, patrol around. And had a nice chat with Rudy today. And so if I get through this in one piece, good. I came tonight solely to express my condolences and gratitude to the Capitola Police Department for their service and sacrifice. Despite the worst possible circumstances inflicted upon our officers and their brethren, they suit up and strap on to protect us from each other and ourselves. I am honored that these heroically courageous men and women are out there on my behalf and yours. Think about that the next time you blindly wish someone harm. I certainly do.
Thank you very much. Could you please write that up and send it to Chief Escalante so he can show your comments to the other officers?
Just one more email.
Yeah, put it on the bulletin board, circulated or whatever, so that they can see it. And yeah, thank you very much. We appreciate that. Who else would like to speak? Oh, Sue. Good evening.
Hello. My name is Paul Pelkey. I've been here since before Zeldas or anything else. Right now, after listening to Mayor Kirby a long time ago, right now I find myself in a difficult position. I could have sold our house over on Hill Street after so many years, but then I found out my other mission was to get 107 men, women, and soldiers on Flight 739 going to Vietnam, Saigon, accountable for. When I went up to try to talk to our Congressman Sam Farr at our newly appointed satellite office that's run by the Department of Defense, and to speak to his liaison, Sonia, after the prior losing of of the prior aid. I think I've got the message on my machine, but basically, I've got so much paperwork. I got casualty reports. I've got names. This is real hard for me. I thought I'd find out about my dad. Everybody here has a father or a son or something. I don't. I have no living relatives. My father, he was in the military. He died in the military. And they say, they send them in, and you forgot about them. I mean, we still forgot about them. I will not stand alone as they stood alone for our freedom, for our liberty, for our loyalty, and they would sacrifice their life, as my dad was on an extra hazardous duty mission. And his mission was to sacrifice his life for every man, woman, and children here, and left behind my mom, who was my dad. And now I find myself being attacked. After vesting my entire life, I've been attacked through probate. And I remember when I was attending after 10 years after living in Hawaii because of my severe arthritis, degenerative disc disease, or all my x-rays right there recently. I've got 6 more bone spurs coming in. My hands, my thumbs are getting overgrown, but then I need some help. Someone cookie cut and they did a drop-down template, cookie cut a special needs trust, and gave me a trustee against my will. And here I am trying to get back into help, try to account for 107 people, because they're well deserving of the Purple Heart posthumously, the Legion of Merit posthumously, the Distinguished Medal of Honor posthumously, and to be accountable for it to their loved ones. As we just lost two police officers just recently, how that hit thousands and thousands of people, how connected that is.
Do we have your telephone number in case there's anything we can do for you?
Yeah.
Do we have that? Is that on the, can you put that on the piece of paper there?
Yes.
Okay, why don't you put your name and telephone number there, and if we think of any ways we can help you.
It makes it real hard, just since...
We should have Lisa give you another bag for all of your things. Do you have any bags with you, Lisa? That would be nice. Okay, thank you very much. Would someone else like to speak? If not, we'll go on to the next item, which is council and staff announcements. Are there any staff announcements?
Staff has none.
Are there any council announcements? Dennis, do you have anything?
No, I'm fine. Thank you.
Sam?
Yeah, thank you, Mayor. I did want to announce, as the representative to the Monterey Bay Air Quality Control Board, that in particular I wanted to let the staff know that the Air Board will be putting out their AB 2766 grant applications, I think, within the next month. So we certainly want to probably consider submitting an application for particular air quality projects that we may have here in Capitola. Thank you, Mayor.
You're welcome. Mike, do you have any? Ed, do you have any? No. Tickets are on sale for the Chamber Community Awards, and the Chamber office is off of Capitola Avenue and near Gale's Bakery, and they go quickly. So if you want to come, it's Severino's, and it's going to be on April 12th. Friday, April 12th, 11:30, Capitola Annual Chamber Awards, and it's always a lot of fun. I think that's all I have. Okay, the next item is the boards and commissions and appointments. There aren't any tonight, so we'll continue that item. The next item is the consent calendar, and these are items that are relatively small and can be grouped together in one motion. And an item can be pulled separately if a citizen would like to pull it, or if a council member would like to discuss it separately. And so is there anyone in the audience that would like to pull an item?
Madam Mayor, I'd like to pull an item 8C, but I just have a question about it. So I'd rather not do it at the end, just because we have as many people here. And, but I'd like to move the rest of the consent agenda if no one wants to pull anything else.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Okay, item C.
And this is for, this is regarding the Community Development Director and Mr. City Manager. While I appreciate the fact that, you know, we managed to hire a quality Community Development Director for anywhere from 11% to 60% less than anybody else in the county, well done. And I hope he didn't do the math that I did and realize that he's the lowest paid Community Development Director. I want to make sure that he's paying according to the PERS cap that the city set up, and also the PERS renewal and changes that were done on the state level. He has all the PERS restrictions as anyone else, does he not?
Councilmember Termini, yes, he does. In fact, you'll recall that last year when we established the new MOU with our miscellaneous groups, we reduced the city's contribution for new employees. And that the new Community Development Director will be subject to that reduced city contribution. So during his first 5 years of employment, he'll actually be paying more into his PERS retirement than the city will be contributing. And the city's contribution is fixed, just under 11.5%. His will be floating as the PERS rate changes.
His cap is actually 5% lower than the cap for any other employee as well. He pays 5% more.
Right.
Roughly.
We have had 1 or 2 hires since that was put in place, but yes, he is in the second tier.
Perfect. That's all. Because there was an incident where we did hire somebody and he didn't pay the PERS cap for a while. I want to make sure that doesn't happen.
Yeah, we'll try to avoid that in the future.
Thank you.
Any other comments? Questions?
I have a comment.
Okay.
So I wanted to first discuss the salary range for this position. I did see some comments on the Sentinel website about the announcement for the position, and some residents expressing concern over the salary. And while it may be less than anything else in the neighboring county or cities in the neighboring county, we are a small city, and I think that this position represents over $12 per citizen, as opposed to other cities where it's roughly $2 per citizen. And one of the things that I was surprised by, and I think that it is requiring the citizens of Capitola to absorb additional unneeded costs, is that the rate of vacation accrual starts as if this person has been here for 5 years. We are in a down economy, to say the least. These types of perks and additions to people's salary are typically associated when you're trying to lure someone or attract someone when you're having a hard time hiring someone. So I was surprised to see that. And I also was surprised to see that there was an immediate credit of 40 hours of vacation pay. 40 hours of sick pay without this person having worked a day. Also, starting out with 30 hours of administrative leave and additional holiday, this adds up to over a month off. And I don't know if anyone has started a new job, but these things are just not standard. When you start a job, you actually have to put in your time, earn your time, and I just don't know why we are subjecting taxpayers to these additional expenses. I definitely would be supportive of these types of expenses if, like I said, we were in a competitive economy, but we had plenty of applicants, and so I just think that as we're spending our taxpayer dollars, we should be spending them wisely.
Thank you. Any other comments? Good evening.
Good evening, Mayor Harlan, council members, staff, Treasurer DeWitt. My name is Gail Ortiz, and I sat on the citizens panel to interview the different candidates. We had a really good, strong candidate pool to choose from. I was a little disappointed that we didn't have anyone from the Santa Cruz region, but I understand that a city this size, how small we are, our staff tends to go the other way. They don't tend to come back from Santa Cruz and from Watsonville. They tend to go to them after they've gotten into the county through Capitola. When I first got on the city council, I felt a little bit the way that Treasurer DeWitt feels, in that I saw some things happening that didn't necessarily happen in private industry. And coming from that background, it was really tough for me at first. I learned a lot of things during my time here. One of them is these particular jobs are so specific. The kind of knowledge that's needed is so specific to government. And the fact that if we don't have someone with those specific skills and background and clout at the state and federal level, Capitola will suffer in all kinds of ways that we can't even imagine and have in the past. So I'm not privy to the package that was offered this candidate, but I would say that there are all kinds of creative ways to get people to come and come from wherever they need to come from. And I would tend to trust our staff to do what they need to do to acquire the highest level staff members that we can, because we don't have that big a staff. We're not that big a city, and that means every single person that works here has to work extra hard and really be good. And this is the head of the department. This is the second person in control in the city of Capitola. It's a big position. So although the council may want to ask some questions about the specifics of this contract, this particular candidate's position is very important, and I think he's well qualified. Thank you.
Thanks very much for coming and for serving on that interview panel, too. Good evening.
So, having been the community development director in Capitola for a number of years and then becoming city manager and going on to be city manager in other cities, I will tell you that the job as community development director in Capitola is one of the most difficult jobs there is to do. That person puts in more time because they not only have to attend the council meetings, they have to attend the planning commission meetings and are assigned other committee meetings to attend. It's also a person who has to have experience in an enormous number of areas. You've actually recently scaled back the size of your community development department, and so it's extremely critical that right now you have people in that position who, when they arrive on day one, are going to be capable of doing the job and taking over. So I just encourage you to go forward with your selection of the community development director, and that's it. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Dennis?
Well, we certainly have a problem with longevity with this position. And to think that we can get somebody to stay around 3 to 5 years seems like a short time, but I think that would be to our benefit. And I'll move the Community Development Director employment agreement with Rich Grunow. Is that how it's pronounced? Grunow? Grunow. Thank you.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any other discussion? All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. And the next item are general government public hearings. And we have items 9A and 9B that are on the same topic but a little different. So we're going to, we have two staff reports, and we're going to take them separately, but they do relate to each other. They are at 426 Capitola Avenue, the former mobile home park next door, soon to be parking lot.
Yes, I'm going to defer to our Public Works Director, but I'm here to answer any questions that you might have about the planning part of this application.
Thank you.
Madam Mayor, for discussion, it's going to be real difficult to separate these two items.
Yeah,
you're going to have public flowing into it, and you're going to have our discussion.
Steve's going to do both presentations.
We'll do them both, and then before we...
Yeah, what we have planned for you is one presentation that I'm going to do that's going to cover the permitting, the project discussion, and some of the finance issues. Susan's here and Tori's here to answer any questions specific to the planning process or to the financing. So we'll have one presentation that will cover all items. Our recommendations at the end cover both items 9A and 9B.
Yeah, and while it's certainly appropriate to talk to them together, the sequencing of the decisions at the end of your deliberations is important because you always have to do the CEQA determination before you proceed to any of the other decisions.
Okay, Steve.
So quick background, just for those who aren't intimately familiar with the Pacific Cove property. The city purchased the Pacific Cove Mobile Home Park in its entirety in 1984. The upper parking lot, which is in use today, was opened in 1987 following consolidation of residents to the lower property. Since that time, the city has conducted numerous studies on possible uses for the lower property. On March 24th, 2 years ago, the pipeline carrying Noble Gold Creek failed underneath the park, causing significant damage to the coaches, roadway, and other elements of the park. Subsequently, the City Council voted to close the park in lieu of making the necessary repairs to the park at that time. On August 9, 2012, the Council approved a preliminary project description for the development of a parking lot project on that site, and that's what we are here discussing tonight. A quick update on the closure. We've had a few questions about that, so I just threw this slide in. The park did close in August 2012. We had 35 coaches on the property at that time. 11 of those coaches have been sold to other parties and moved off the site. 3 were removed by their owners. 20 are currently scheduled for demolition. We have not been able to find takers for them. We've offered to give them away, and bids for that demolition work is due early in April, and the city is retaining 1 coach on the site to be used for a police department. The budget which was approved at the time of closing the park was $2.4 million, and the cost that we have incurred to date is about $1.8 million. The majority of those costs have gone toward relocation benefits, purchasing coaches from the residents and helping them relocate for those who qualified. Looking at the parking lot project, the current parking lot design has 226 spaces in it. They all are within the existing footprint of the Pacific Cove Mobile Home Park, meaning we are not moving out any retaining walls. We're not expanding the footprint. We're not removing any of the trees from the hillside. We are maximizing the use of pervious pavements throughout the project. Like I said, minimal tree removal and retaining wall construction. The only retaining wall construction that we are doing is retaining walls that were found to be damaged, several from the 2011 storm and several just due to age. Project plans are about 75% complete at this time. The negative declaration, coastal permits, and use permits were approved by the Planning Commission on March 7, 2013, and they have been appealed to this body for consideration. Expenses to date for permitting and planning have been $82,500. So I realize this is a small scale map, but I just wanted to give people an idea of what we're looking at. We have Capitol Avenue over here, Bay Avenue up here with Monterey going off. So we have parking, head-in parking on 2 sides. In the lower, what I'll call the east or western portion of the park continues here. This is the restrooms about in the middle that we are proposing to remodel. And we have some diagonal parking going through the park. Up in this area, laying out the parking became difficult. We do have to have a fire turnaround up here. So to accommodate that turnaround and the existing retaining walls, it's a little awkward, I would say, for the parking up there, but it does fit. So we have 226 spaces. On this plan, the darker gray is the roadway, which cars will travel on. We anticipate that being asphalt at this point. And then the parking stalls themselves are a permeable material drain rock over a netting to hold in place that is structurally sound. I've got some pictures of that coming up. So looking at the cost estimate, the original estimate is what we discussed back in October or in August when you approved the project description, and the current estimate is where we're at today. Unfortunately, the costs have gone up. You can see that the biggest item that has gone up is obviously the parking lot grading, surfacing, and including the stormwater improvements. The biggest change there have been the amount of stormwater improvements that are required. I had put in $25,000 for stormwater improvements in the original estimate. The cost for those are upwards of $300,000. The reason for that increase was there's new stormwater requirements that were adopted by the regional board at the same time we were thinking about this project that have new requirements for post-construction runoff. Any parking lot over 25 parking spaces or 22,000 square feet are required to do major water quality and hydraulic improvements. And so I just wanted to briefly go over those since they are the major reason for our cost increase. Like I said, in late 2012, they adopted these standards. They require runoff reduction, so we need to minimize the impervious surfaces. We need to actually treat all the water that comes off the impervious surfaces by putting it through bioswales or other infiltration techniques. We need to retain the runoff on site for 95% of all the storms. You have to go back to a 30-year history of the storms in the area, figure out what 95% for that. So that's about a 2 to 2.5 inch storm in 24 hours that we have to retain on site. And we have to manage the flows so that we only release them depending on the flow in the 2 to 10 year storm range. So those are, on a small project, they're not that difficult. On a larger project, as all jurisdictions come to realize how to implement these things, they are going to be a significant cost to future projects as we move forward. And these aren't new standards that California's dreaming of. They've actually been in place for, state of Washington's been doing them for the last decade. Portland's way ahead of us on doing this. The East Coast has also been doing them. So California's kind of catching up in this regard. I talked about the permeable pavers. This is a snapshot of a website. It's a grid system that is underlain with about a 6-inch base of drain rock and other rock, and then you pour rock into these cells here. They talk about being designed for parking lots. You can actually grow lawn on it if you wanted to. Our intent is not to let the weeds grow on it or the grass grow on it, but to just have it as a permeable area where we would park the cars. We're not recommending it at this time for the roadway. I'm not convinced it's really designed for the loadings and vehicle loads, moving vehicle loads that we'll have there. I think we'll see pushing and rutting. So that's why we recommend the asphalt for there. Some possible cost reduction possibilities. We could delay the restroom renovation, which we have $75,000 in the budget. We currently have $50,000 for the moving the coach that we're saving on site. We could reduce that by $25,000, which would get it moved and probably make it operational for the PD, but wouldn't do all the remodel that we have planned for it. We do have $30,000 in improvements currently budgeted for the upper parking lot, and that's going to be a sidewalk on the driveway that goes from Cap Ave up to the upper parking lot in that driveway. And we also have $90,000 for putting pay stations in the upper parking lot. So if we're looking for savings, those are some areas we could look at. Other options, which we don't have as much detail cost on, we could eliminate all the paving and put drain rock in the roadway. Like I expressed earlier, there's concerns about the long-term or short-term even structural ability of the roadway. We estimate that would probably could save upwards of a couple $100,000. And we could also reduce the scope of the project if the council is serious about wanting to reduce the costs. Financing, Currently, we're recommending a program that includes a loan from the California Infrastructure and Economic Development Bank, better known as the iBank. The project has received preliminary project approval from this program. The current interest rate is between 2 and 2.5% over 20 years. And to finalize the application, we do require that the council adopt a resolution authorizing the city manager to execute a contract. Currently, we have set that contract with a maximum of 2.5%. If it's over that 2.5%, when we finally get approval, we would have to return to the council. Along with another financing mechanism we're recommending is refinancing the $2.39 million loan we got for closing the mobile home park with Santa Cruz County Bank. The current rate is 5.14. We can reduce it to 3.25%, and that would result in an interest savings of $350,000 over 9 years. So looking at everything based on a $1.3 million project, which is what our estimate is today, the annual debt service would be just slightly over $88,000. We anticipate a savings of $28,250 for refinancing the loan with Santa Cruz County Bank. We've projected a parking space revenue for the new lot at $36,400. We will be able to terminate our shuttle lease, which we do up at Crossroads, which is about $5,000 a year. And with removing of the existing coach for the police department, we anticipate we can reduce the storage costs for the police department by $4,000. So that brings the estimated net cost of $14,000, slightly over $14,000. Real close, just going over the financing costs for the iBank loan and the refinancing. We have bond counsel costs of $12,500. We need to appraise the corporation yard because that is the collateral we're using. We estimate that at $5,000. Title insurance for the corporation yard, and then fees from the Santa Cruz County Bank and iBank of $21,000. So we do have refinancing fees, which we have included in our most current estimate of $42,500. So our recommendations tonight, and like the City Attorney mentioned, we need to do them in the order they're listed here, is to uphold the Planning Commission decision certifying the negative declaration and approving the use and coastal development permits, finalize the scope of work and project estimate, approve the financing plan, which includes adoption of a resolution authorizing application to iBank and approving of the refinancing of the Santa Cruz County Bank loan. And we're also requesting an opportunity or the authorization to take the project to bid based on the final scope you produce. We continue to work off estimates. We could refine the plans and redo another estimate. I think at this point we would be best served by revising the plans to the scope of work we developed tonight, taking the project out to bid. If our estimate is good, we can go to construction and get it done, by the end of the summer. If the cost comes high, it gives us an opportunity to work with that contractor to figure out how to best proceed and lower the costs. Like I said, that is the end of my report. Susan's here for permitting questions, Tori's here for finance questions, and City Manager and I are ready to answer any questions you may have.
Thank you very much. Are there any council questions, Mike?
Steve, it seems like we're putting a lot of money into our stormwater retention and runoff, and if we did not make this a parking lot, would we still have to do that if we had a different project going on there?
What we need to mitigate is any impervious surfaces out there. So if it's all impervious now, is it not? Pretty much. Yeah, but with the new regulations, you can't look at what's there now. You have to look at what we're going to have when we're done with it. There's no credits anymore for existing pervious systems.
So we can't just leave it the way it is, put the stripes in?
Because that's not doing a project on it.
Right.
Right.
I'm saying we could make it into a parking lot without doing any paving, because it's all paved effectively.
Well, it's not very even, and there's some.
I didn't say it was a beautiful parking lot. I just went, because I'm seeing $800,000 is remarkable. I think that's the figure that I saw.
Well, that's for all the earthwork grading, bringing in the new surfacing and the stormwater improvements.
Right. So it seems like, that's where we need to focus, not so much eliminate things like bathrooms or things that would make it a better place. I mean, would improve it generally. The lighting, important. And I'm sure you took pains to make them all dark sky lights so there's no glare for any of the neighbors. I realize the parking lot is depressed, but there's still a potential. We do have people living next to it.
All the light will be downcast lighting.
Good.
And at this point, we are proposing wiring will be overhead for the lights.
Great.
They're going to be simple wood poles with Cobra headlights on them.
And could you bring back the plan? Well, what I was getting to, my original question is, if we were to take up all this paving and turn it into, let's say, a park, we would still have significant stormwater drainage improvements to do on the lot.
If we only put in impervious area or porous area, like if it's all grass or natural landscaping or whatever, there wouldn't be any stormwater requirements.
So even though
what we are mitigating is the impervious areas that we are adding into the
even though we're making all the parking spaces pervious, how about
we still have the driveways and the roadway that we're doing.
But so if we took out, I know you're not necessarily recommending leaving all the paving in as it is and just walking away from it and making it a parking lot because it is temporary. If we removed all the paving and made it all pervious, would we then have a parking lot that didn't need all the stormwater mitigation?
That would be an option, yes, and we could do that. The use of drain rock or pervious material is what they call a self-mitigating measure. We would still need to direct the runoff, but we would reduce a lot of the storage that we need to do on site. And I do estimate that would save several $100,000 if we made the paved roadway drain rock.
Great. Would you go back to the map? You had another one that was a little more, up on top. Where do you see the shuttle coming in and picking and dropping off people?
I actually see the shuttle coming in on Capitol Avenue.
Right.
Okay, we're going to build a shuttle stop right here at the beginning. We're going to put one at the restroom. And those are the two we're going to start operations with. There's going to be a third opportunity if we want to add one in this little nose here.
Well, I'm trying to figure out a shuttle stop that would service all the people up at Upper Pacific Cove as well, because that's,
Yeah, well, I think they could easily get to this one here because they got to come down. Here's the roadway coming down here, and it'd just be a matter of going back into here. And then we've talked about potentially adding one at the top of by the railroad crossing by Park and Monterey.
And if I'm not mistaken, your calculations for the amount of money per year that this lot would generate is based on what is it, 50 cents an hour at Pacific Cove right now? 25 cents for a half an hour?
Yes, it's at 50 cents. It's at current rates, which is 50 cents an hour.
Got it. And that's where you came up with $36,000 a year?
Yeah, I think it's based on, let's see if Tori wants to help me. I could probably add a little bit.
It was based on the assumption that it would be occupied at 50% of the time as the upper lot.
At 50 cents an hour?
Yes.
And we would still, patrol it. We would still, we'd have all the costs that are associated with our parking program now associated with this lot as well.
Yes.
But this lot also removes all the this proposal removes all the meters in Upper Pacific Cove, does it not?
Yes, it removes all the meters in both lots, yes.
Are there any, can you think of any significant places in the city where, I'm looking at the iBank loan at a very attractive rate, and we are doing a parking program with it, where we could add parking kiosks, parking machines as opposed to meters, in an effort to rid the whole city of parking meters?
Yeah, we could rid the city. There's some still left in the village on Capitol Avenue, lower portion of Monterey Avenue, and on the cliff. So we could certainly add more in those areas and eliminate all of our single space meters.
Okay.
I don't have a number for that. I would have.
No, I understand. I just want to get a feel for it.
10 or so.
That's all I have. Thank you.
Would it be considered ADA accessible if it's not paved?
Yes, the new surface is ADA accessible.
No, if we don't pave it.
Right, but the drain rock pattern that I showed you is considered ADA accessible.
Okay, thank you.
One point, Councilmember Termini, that I do think deserves some consideration about making the entire lot out of the pervious surfaces. There's, in my view, there's more risk. I think is probably the best way to describe it, is that we understand how the asphalt would work as a drive aisle. It's a little bit unclear to us in that environment how the drive aisles would work with this material, whether they'd hold up, whether we'd end up, within the space of a year or two having to just do a lot of maintenance to keep it operational. That's part of staff's reluctance. Another thing is that we've been looking at this as a real opportunity for the city to do things on both, sort of make the Pack Cove lot, the current Pack Cove lot, more useful, using it for special events if we have parking down below, or conversely using the lower portion for a few things. And so, in my opinion, the asphalt, some of the asphalt does allow other things to take place, more flexibility moving forward in the future.
What about the idea of not doing anything and just using the impervious paving that's existing overall and not doing any grading and paving?
I think
that's a big number. That's half this project.
Yeah, functionally, I think that you'd end up with, it would be weird. I mean, you know, for a municipal lot to be sort of partially dirt and then asphalt and then a little patch of concrete and it's uneven and puddling and rutted. I think as a public facility it would be odd, and I think we'd be exposing ourselves to some liability just because the nature of the surface could lead to problems.
Thank you.
All right.
Dennis?
Go ahead, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Dennis. And Steve, I wanted to ask, I mean, this is coming to us as an appeal from the Planning Commission approval of the project and of the negative declaration. I'm just curious as to what is the grounds of the appeal, just so that we can maybe
Dennis, because
focus our attention on what the particular issue is here that we need to oversee from the Planning Commission's decision.
It was appealed by Councilman Norton, so I don't know if her or Susan wants to.
The application was appealed by Councilmember Norton, and it has been your policy, I understand, that council members are allowed to appeal Planning Commission decisions without giving a specific reason for doing that. So I think you'd have to ask Councilmember Norton.
Okay, well, thank you. Well, I mean, if that's appropriate, Dennis, I guess I wanted to, because I'm trying to separate the CEQA issue and the negative declaration, and whether or not the appeal was based on some difficulties with that decision, or if not, then maybe we don't need to review that question, or maybe if you felt that the negative declaration was inappropriate, that we should. And on the other hand, whether if there was some other basis of your appeal.
Well, I felt that the community didn't get a chance to address alternative projects. In other words, this project came only as a parking lot to the Planning Commission. No other uses were discussed at the Planning Commission except for that. And there certainly is discussion in the community about having alternative uses, number one. Number two, it's hard to argue CEQA since we're taking really a parking lot and turning it into a parking lot. So I don't know that there's argument there. But as a habitat, there's certainly an argument as the value to this community in that valley there as a habitat area. And so that's part of my appeal. The third thing would be that I just felt it was more appropriate for an issue this big, particularly when we're borrowing every penny for this thing, that the council made the final decision on this project, not the Planning Commission. So that's why I appealed.
Okay. So I just want, I mean, it sounds like there's not a particular issue with the Planning Commission's finding that this project qualified for a negative declaration.
I think that is correct, and it is a negative declaration. It's not like an EIR where you're required to provide alternative scenarios in it. Right. I think it does meet all of the current CEQA requirements, and it's my understanding, and maybe I can help Councilmember Norton out a little bit, that he had expressed to staff some concerns about the conditional use permit and wanted to have a few additional conditions in the conditional use permit. So you could go ahead and certify the negative declaration. You absolutely can add new conditions into the conditional use permit and then approve the conditional use permit, the architectural site review permit, and the coastal commission. But
just add one thing to that is that also give a chance to address both the project and the funding of the project in the same night. I think it's critically important because they flow between each other. Even how we're going to have a discussion tonight, it was important that we discuss both of those.
Right.
So.
And I will point out the council on a number of occasions has approved permits for projects which have not gone forward. I think the police facility in the Pacific Cove lot you have approved at least 3 times and didn't go forward with the project because financially you decided not to do that. So I will reiterate that certifying the negative declaration and approving the permits in no way obligates you to go forward with the project.
All right. Thank you for that clarification. I did have a particular question, Steve. In your report, you indicate that there's 226 parking spaces, but in the staff report to the Planning Commission, it says that the parking demand in the village currently exceeds parking supply by 176, and that this lot, existing supplied, or this lot will give us an additional 57, which to me that totals 233. So
you are correct. When we did our negative declaration and the staff report for the Planning Commission, particularly on things like parking lots, you always go with the highest number that is possible to put into that parking lot. And at that point in time, I think it was 233 spaces, because under CEQA and the planning permits, you can always do less, but you can't do more. And so I think the numbers in here are slightly higher than actually it will ultimately turn out to be.
Okay. Thanks for that clarification. On the actual meters, and it indicates would be 2 meters at each of the shuttle stops so there will be a total of 6 meters
that is correct,
in that lower lot.
Yes.
And where would those be placed in the lot? And
so we anticipate one shuttle stop and pay stations will be right here at the end by the turnaround, one by the restrooms, and then the other one up at this little nose at the upper end of the parking lot. So we'll kind of spread them out through the lot. Everybody will have the opportunity to get to them. We figure 2 at each spot to try and mitigate, when there's high demand in there, having to stand in a long line.
Is there any ability to maybe spread them out across the lot any more?
Certainly we could relocate them. I think there's some advantage to, as far as signage in the lot and things like that, to try and keep them in groups. If you think it'd be better to spread them out, we could certainly do that.
They're mobile, are they not?
Well, yeah, they take a concrete base, but we could relocate them if we wanted to, yes.
Well, I would just, when we did it on the Esplanade, we kind of interspersed them equally in equal distance in numerous locations, so that they would be equally convenient to all
on-street parking, because you can go multiple directions when you park on street. If you park in this parking lot, in reality, you're going to go out one end or the other. And with the pay stations we're proposing, you don't need to go back to your car. So if you park here and you're going out the lot, you're going to come across where you need to pay. Where when you go park on the Esplanade, you could go any direction. That's why you have to have more when you have on-street parking than you do in a parking lot.
Okay. Well, thank you. That does make sense. And let me check my notes here, Mayor, quickly. In the Planning Commission packet also, Steve, there's a letter from the Flood Control District, and within it, they seem to abrogate any responsibility or ownership of that drainage. Have we, are we planning to respond to that letter in some way to just maybe indicate that we have a disagreement over that issue?
Yes, we have met with them. I've met with their staff and with their public works director, and any final agreements regarding this parking lot project, as we are required to get a permit from Zone 5 for this project. They've agreed to, remain silent on that, or we'll have some language in there that say that is still under discussion. So
Okay, great.
we
Thank
have
you.
had that.
All right, thank you, Mayor.
Other questions?
I have just a couple. Yeah. Steve, can you go to the slide? It was a slide that I think showed the payment for the iBank, how that was being distributed.
Financing costs
That
or
one
this one?
there, yeah. I'm looking at the number, the projected parking space revenue, and I want to know if you think that is a conservative number, a high number. Does it include pay stations and the fact that they've shown a 20% increase, and how did you come up with that number?
I think, as Tori said earlier, it was based on the upper lot right now generates about $80,000 a year. So they're very similar in size, within 6 faces of each other. So we certainly don't anticipate that much revenue down there. So I think we took it to about 50%, slightly less than 50% of the revenue we generate from the upper lot.
Okay. And the other question is on the reduced storage costs. That's the trailer's going to be moved, and is my understanding it's going to be for some of the police confiscation. Is that the?
It's going to be for their evidence room, their records room, and it's also going to have the parking enforcement officers in it.
Okay. And did the parking enforcement officers at the time, they did not used to have a place? We used to lease the place across the street?
We used to they were originally in the house next in the parking lot that's no longer there, and then we moved them across the street to 411, and they are currently in the community room.
So we've lost our community room as a result of that. How much were we paying to rent the space across the street so that they had a place to be?
$25,000 a year, if I remember correctly.
So okay, so a couple $1,000s a month. So we're actually going to be saving to have the same facilities that we had, a place for them to be. It is a way of looking at a savings of revenue.
Oh, yeah, well, yeah, and reclaiming the community center, because the community room, because remember the community room was the exchange for the, we lost the community room, we got rid of the lease, we were in a tough financial time. Right. Here we're able to reclaim the community room. I
just don't see it as an advantage that we lost a community service room.
Oh,
so
it wasn't. Yeah, it was,
so as I'm looking at this number here, I think the moving of that coach is actually saving us a lot more than $4,000.
Yeah, that is just what they are currently paying to store their records.
For the evidence.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's just a way to look at that possibly that it's not going to cost us. We're actually, by by giving them a place to be, it becomes a zero number or actually a negative or a positive, the way that you look at it.
Well, we can't offer another service in the community, which is the community room, which I think was real important to a lot of us.
I mean, the numbers become important, and that'll play out later. But I just wanted to just have some discussion. In fact, that is a cost that's not being shown in there, and it's an advantage that we're going to have. So.
And I think on the parking meter rate, I don't think any of us are really going to defend the number. We don't really have an. I mean, the only data point we have is the rate at which the spaces in Pack Cove generate, and. We took 50% of that number, but certainly I think someone could argue why it should be 75. Someone might be able to argue why it should be 25%. But that's a number, and there isn't really much data for which to go off.
Great. Thank you.
Any questions?
No, I'll wait till after the public hearing.
How many trees are going to be taken out? I know we were trying to have it be very minimal, and the plans show only a few trees where they're actually parking spaces, and you can't.
Yeah, I believe there are only, Susan, correct me, there's 14 trees that are all in the lower part, between all the mobile homes now. Most of them are, I think, the horticultural type. There are no significant trees down there that we are removing. All the trees on the bank are remaining, and the planning plan calls for us replacing all the trees removed with 2 trees. So we're removing 14. We'll be planting 28 trees in the landscaped areas.
Okay, and then shrubs, and then ground cover.
There are some shrubs, and I don't actually remember ground cover in the landscaping plan, but there will be trees and shrubs.
Okay, and that's something we can look at afterwards also.
Right. To be honest, in part of the going through the cost here, we are minimizing We're focusing on trees, tree replacement in the lot. The shrubs, we are going to be developing 3 bioswale areas which will have plantings in them, but the rest of the area, if we want to do additional landscaping, will have to come later.
Yeah. Okay, this is the time for the public to talk about this, and we are very happy that so many people showed up for it. So I'm opening the public hearing. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Nels Westman. I am here tonight on behalf of your Traffic and Parking Commission. I am also a resident of Riverview Terrace, a neighborhood heavily impacted by village overflow parking. The Traffic and Parking Commission is on record with the Council in strong support of the construction of this temporary parking lot. It is a key step in ultimately reaching a permanent parking solution for Capitola Village. The proposed 226-space temporary parking lot will provide immediate relief to village residents, to residents in the neighborhood surrounding the village, to village merchants and employees, and to village visitors. For those of us who don't have permit parking on our street, we know the impacts of employee and village overflow parking. This lot will be a huge help, and it will start providing this relief soon, this year, 2013. It will also allow the city to operate a really efficient, well-utilized shuttle bus service, which will reduce village traffic congestion. And we should explore a program to allow employees to park in the temporary lot all winter for free, which will absolutely get them out of our neighborhoods. But more than that, it is a real-life test that I believe will show us that a permanent parking structure is needed. And obviously, in order to build a parking structure, we need to have a temporary parking lot for substitute parking. It would be horrible to think about dumping yet another 234 village parkers into the residential neighborhoods instead of providing substitute parking during construction. Very simply, it's cruel to your community to try and build a parking structure without having a temporary replacement parking lot in operation. Now, I know that some of you are concerned about the temporary cost. I think it's about $945,000 before you start adding upgrades to create an annex for overflow City Hall employees, improving the upper parking lot, and including several upgrades like bathrooms to make the temporary lot function better. But to keep this in perspective, let's remember, a couple of years ago, you borrowed $2.3 million to close the mobile home park and to compensate the mobile home park residents and pay for their relocation expenses. In some ironic Twilight Zone sort of a way, $945,000 almost sounds reasonable. Regardless, it is a necessary cost to put this property back in urgently needed public service. And second, many people have forgotten that since they were first installed in the village, parking meters have generated over $10 million for the city. That's a lot of quarters. These meters were originally installed to buy the Pacific Cove property. They have paid for they have completely paid for the Pacific Cove property, for building the existing parking lot, for paying into the $2.3 million debt service that from a couple of years ago, and many other parking improvements in the village. The cost of the temporary parking lot will be self-funded by the meters in Pacific Cove. I know the things showed $14,000 deficit. There really should be a rate increase in Pacific Cove, which will generate more than enough revenue to completely service the debt. This is not some sort of a sellout to automobiles that some might claim. Parking and parking meters is what made owning Pacific Cove possible in the first place. This temporary lot is part of a vision and a program to provide a permanent parking solution paid for by parking fees that will produce a much better quality of life for everyone in the village. This temporary lot is the key to getting us there. Then you can do whatever the community wants to do with the lower terrace. But please, be grateful that the parking meters and parking are what made it possible for you to have that canvas to work with. So I urge you to move forward tonight and vote to support the project, and let's get it started and let's get it done for 2013. And I have a little PS here. I think I'm way over on time, but this is this is my passion. I think you absolutely have to stick with an AC road, asphalt concrete roadway. You're going to have shuttle buses, you're going to have fire trucks, you're going to have lots of traffic. We need to put at least the beginning of the stripes for where the spaces are going to be. We need to put the numbers for the pay stations. We need to have a surface that will stay put. And having it all with some kind of plastic mat and decomposed granite or crushed granite or whatever, that's not going to it's not going to give you satisfactory performance for a year, much less 3 or 4 years of this temporary parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And I'll give everybody a little more time if they run over the 3 minutes, because I know you all care about this a lot and have a lot to say.
Do we do this ourselves?
No.
Okay. Good evening. My name is Janet Fogel. I'm here with my husband, Lawrence Fogel. We're new residents to Capitola. We live at 420 Pilgrim. And so our property is going to be affected by the construction in that we live on the part of the hillside that is slippage. It's slipping down. So we bought the property knowing full well that this was going to be taking place, and we've met with Steve. We've also I've had opportunities to talk with some of you regarding this, and so we're fine with what has to be done up there. We understand we're going to lose some beautiful landscaping, but that's an opportunity to do some new landscaping. What I'm here to speak to, however, is the parking lot. And I'm a fan of Dennis Norton and of the positions that you've taken. I am an environmentalist on many levels and would even love to see the Esplanade close. However, I'm also a realist. My husband and I were both involved in the city of Scotts Valley politics for many years. We understand process. The two things, though, that concern me about the parking lot, one is that this place has a spirit to it. There were residents that lived there since 1984. There are remnants of their lives that still exist when you walk through, even though it's a sad place to walk through right now. There's incredible beauty in some of the things that are left. There are artifacts of the history of Pacific Cove in some of the landscaping that still remains. And this is landscaping that, mind you, has been making it through a drought year with absolutely no help whatsoever, except that it's virulent and it's beautiful. I'm questioning the value of having 226 parking spaces when we could, as a community, honor what was there and actually have a monument or some memorial spots in that parking lot that pay tribute to what Pacific Cove was once in this community, and at the same time offer some visual relief to something that is, generally speaking, pretty obnoxious, just a parking lot all paved over. I think we can also give up a few parking places to consider the aesthetic importance of our community. People come to Capitola. Why? Because it's beautiful. It's a beautiful place on earth. One of the most beautiful places I've ever seen on earth. And even our parking lot can speak to that. It doesn't have to be an ugly, paved over piece of contemporary society without any look toward the future. And so that's why I'm here, because even though sometimes we think of aesthetics as being the last thing to regard in something as functional as a parking lot, I disagree. I think that the aesthetic has to be a part of the plan, and I don't see that yet. I don't see where we've spoken to that as a community. The aesthetic and that piece of healing that comes when you honor what was there before. And so with those two pieces in mind, I'm willing to help in any way that I can with that, to contribute what I'm learning about parking landscape. As a commissioner in Scotts Valley with Parks and Recreation, I spent a lot of time researching parking lots and aesthetics and lighting and landscaping, etc. My husband was 18 years on the Planning Commission in Scotts Valley. We've been involved in communities in a deep way because we love where we live. And now that we're here in Capitola, we're in love with Capitola. We care about it. And we want to contribute in a way that we can. So if there's anything that I can bring to the city, it would be my love of beautiful places and what I'm learning about how, with no additional cost whatsoever, but just with some choices, we can maintain this as a beautiful community, even our parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. And my name is Mark Sullivan. I live in Capitola. Thank you, council, staff, for hearing us on this important issue. And I'm going to urge you to vote no on this project, primarily because of the economics of it makes absolutely no sense to me. And I'm going to read some of the arguments in favor of Measure O that we just passed in November, because I think that they're relevant, and I think that they fairly characterize the financial situation in Capitola today. And also because 4 out of 5 of you were signatories of the argument itself. So, Ed, you're off the hook on that one for now. But those arguments said, and these are direct quotes, Capitola has been hard hit by prolonged economic downturn. This, combined with floods, means that Capitola is facing unprecedented fiscal challenges. In response, over the last 5 years, Capitola city staffing has been significantly reduced by 8 full-time employees. During this period, maintenance to the city streets, storm drains, and other infrastructure has also had to be decreased. And now I'm going to skip down. Of even greater concern are delays in preventative pavement maintenance. If preventative maintenance is delayed, our roads will deteriorate to the point where repair costs will increase dramatically by a factor of 50 times. Help keep our town of Capitola intact. And so here is your appeal to the people of the city of Capitola. If this measure passes, the city can improve local roads at the level necessary, maintain city fiscal stability to provide essential services, maintain police services, restore emergency reserves, and assisting in relocation of the Pacific Cove mobile home park residents displaced by the flood. Well, now you're being asked to approve this project, which is a $1.4 million project. It's a tourist parking lot that won't improve the lives of a great majority of the residents here. And a great majority of the project will be paid for by the residents of Capitola. $1.4 million for a tourist parking lot that will exist for as little as 5 years is an irresponsible use of tax dollars, because most Capitola residents will never see the benefits. Now, in the argument, you say we're facing unprecedented fiscal challenges, but I am having a hard time understanding how 226 temporary parking places are going to help us address those challenges. So perhaps we do have a spending problem, and I'm going to ask you that when you vote tonight, please remember that when we, the citizens of Capitola, voted in favor of Measure O, we voted to maintain our city and streets to help keep them safe for the residents of Capitola. We didn't expect that this money would be squandered on a temporary tourist structure that may last for only a period of 5 years. So I urge you to vote no, and thank you for hearing us.
And Measure O funds are not going to be used for this. We would borrow money and put the parking meters in there, which would essentially make the debt payments.
Well, there is a shortfall that will be paid by the general fund for which Measure O funds are contributing.
Yeah, we don't know the exact final cost yet. We have to go out to bid on this.
We do know that some money that we voted for will be used to help finance this parking lot, and I don't believe it will be for the purposes that you stated in your arguments in favor of Measure O.
We're not sure of the final cost yet.
Well,
those are estimates.
Those estimates were just shown to us, so that's all we know. There has been no real, that's another problem that I have. There really has been no, really good fine point pin on the financial costs of this project, and the benefits of this project have never been explained to me. So another reason why I'm against it.
Thank you very much for coming down.
Thank you.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you, Mayor, council members, staff. My name is Ethan Behrman. You hear me most days of the week on KSCO. I want to advise that my opinion is no on spending the $1.4 million. We have a significant number of unknowns in the initial process here, as openly stated by, well, the mayor just said it herself, and I will keep it under 3 minutes, by the way. I can talk really fast. But the issue, we also have issues like the pay stations. Great, we're going to spend $90,000. What about ongoing maintenance and management of those devices? What about personnel to staff and have to monitor? Is there going to be additional police cost of monitoring another parking area? What about, and I really hope that you consider Councilmember Termini's suggestion, why not leave it as it is since it's a temporary parking lot? So that's the key operative word here. We're going to spend $1.4 million on something that is temporary. So we already have a parking lot there. Why not utilize something in a temporary status for a temporary purpose and not spend $1.4 million and find another way to do this? And I find this incredibly important, especially in light of Kim DeWitt's comments earlier about the hire. You know, this is not a time of glorious revelry for cash for the majority of Californians, particularly not anywhere in Santa Cruz County, and Capitola is no exception to that. So when we see a project that appears to be something that is of, I don't know, personal benefit or keeping our planning department busy or something along those lines, as opposed to a concrete, specific benefit for, well, the 10,000 plus of us that live and pay taxes in the city of Capitola, I think that's a very important consideration to make. I got to say, when Councilmember Termini made that suggestion, why not just leave it and then ding, 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 temporary? That's like a magical solution for our problem. If you're going to build another structure, since we heard from our first speaker who was pro spending $1.4 million, if we're going to build another structure later, let's take advantage of the investment already made. If there has to be something done a little bit different, maybe a new light is installed for the parking purposes, that's great. But my advice is no, that's my position. If you want to talk about it more on the air, give me a call.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Ann Spoon. Thank you for hearing me tonight. I'm opposed to this parking lot for many reasons, and several people before have stated some of the reasons, but I'll reiterate. First, I'd like to address your comment about the estimates. Yes, they are estimates, and they could go above and beyond that. I, too, voted for Measure O, and thinking that those funds would be spent in a different way, benefiting more the residents of Capitola, not tourists. I agree with that statement. I want to go back to many years ago. I don't even remember how many years ago it was, when the underpass was built at Bay Avenue and Porter. I spoke to the City Council at that time, and I was concerned about the removal of the trees there. That was not only beautiful, but it was a tremendous sound barrier for the residents of Capitola. And I was told that that's not a problem. Those trees would be replaced as a sound barrier. They have not. And maybe there was a tree planted somewhere else, but it didn't affect the sound from the freeway. I hear the sound from the freeway 24 hours a day. And those trees that were taken down were a sound barrier. So I'm concerned about tree removal. I'm concerned about green space removal. And I really have concerns about the amount of traffic that would filter into this parking lot that would affect all the residents around it. And you make a parking space and it's going to get filled, and that means somebody has to drive through to get there. And that's going to have a big impact on our neighborhoods. Yes, I acknowledge that parking is a problem, but we need to consider the impact on the residents. Not only traffic, pollution, noise is a major factor. Let's see what else. Well, I think that's about it, but I am opposed to it, and I think the money part is unclear yet, so thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
I'm James Wallace. I live at 608 Gilroy Drive, Capitola, right here in the neighborhood. I am on the General Plan Committee, so I have a little bit of knowledge of this. And my wife, Vicki, is on the Traffic Commission. And first of all, I want to thank Nels and Ed and all the people that were on that commission and all the work they've done. They've done a lot of work, and they've put their heart and soul into this. My main thing is I'd love to see a permanent parking structure built, so I don't want to see the City Council lose its main focus. That being said, I have some definite concerns here. I just want to read a few notes from, we had workshops last year for the general plan. We had a good turnout over at Jade Street. And consensus from groups. Use this is number one. Use the Pack Cove site to provide a parking solution for Capitola Village. What my friend Nels Westman's been talking about. We need a parking solution, okay? The groups emphasize the importance of the city to prioritize a parking structure to address the variety of important parking issues in the village. So we know we need a parking structure, okay? So, number two, provide a temporary surface parking to serve in Lower Pack Cove Park. Most all participants in the workshop agreed that Pack Cove Mobile Home Park should be used in the short term parking to serve the village. Most participants felt that the temporary parking should be converted to alternative use once the parking structure is completed. Some people suggested a sunset clause to ensure the temporary parking would convert to alternative use at a specified time. Like, I think a few of you have said 3 years, 5 years. So if you do this temporary parking, please put a cap on it, because you know how things are in Capitola. They bought the Rispin how many years ago, and it's still, nobody ever gets to use it for anything. And then at the end, all groups supported the eventual restoration of the natural environment in Pack Cove Mobile Home Park. So when the temporary parking is done, that is too valuable of a piece of ground to have it be a permanent parking lot. Now, my next concern, how temporary is temporary? I like that Councilman Termini was open-minded enough to look into saying, maybe we don't need to pave the whole thing over right now. Let's save some money, because the less permanent you make it, the more temporary it is. So I'm all in favor of a temporary parking lot, and that's where I have to disagree with Nels. I don't think, and Jamie, I don't think we need the permanent parking, whatever pavers are that cost $800,000. Use what you got down there. Let's get some parking. Let's get some relief. Let's keep our eye on the ball, and let's build a parking structure. The Parking Commission has done a lot of hard work. I hope you guys use it like a Bible. Nels and those guys have worked their butts off on this thing. Please do. And if and when we do get this temporary parking, that'll give us enough parking spots in there to occasionally maybe do what they do in San Francisco, have a Sunday streets program once and twice, maybe close the Esplanade down on a Sunday. We've done it for Art and Wine for 15 years. For years we were told you can't close the Esplanade. Everybody, all the merchants and all the restaurant owners were really concerned. Well, Tony Castro convinced them to let them do it 1 year as a pilot program. Well, you know what? Their business was fine. They actually got more business, so that it did work out okay. So let's have a pilot program there for some Sunday streets. Let's keep our eye on the ball. Let's have a temporary parking lot, but I like that Mike is looking into, okay, how can we cut costs here a little bit? To me, it's ludicrous to spend $1.4 million on a temporary parking lot. It's not a temporary parking lot for $1.4 million. It's a permanent parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you for letting me address the council. My name is Amy Forrest. I live on Oak Drive, just a stone's throw from the parking structure the parking lot that's there right now. And I totally agree with what James said. Let's keep this temporary. I was at the GPAC meeting as well, and there was overwhelming support for this to be a park. And once you start spending $1.4 million or whatever you're going to spend to build a parking lot, it becomes more permanent, and it becomes more tempting to make it permanent. And it's important to think about what's it going to take to bring it back to a park once you start bringing in the pavers and you start paving it over and doing everything that you're going to do. What's the plan to actually turn it into a park in 3 to 5 years? Because that was overwhelming what people wanted. And I think actually if you did a survey, I'd like to see you maybe do a survey monkey in the city, you know, some kind of survey that you send off to city residents to find out what they really want there. And I agree we do need the temporary parking lot so we can get the parking structure. But the last thing we want to see is 2 parking lots. It's already enough to have that 1 parking lot, the visual blight. We need a park. We don't have space. You know, we're losing Jade Street Park, and we need more open space. And this is a perfect opportunity. We've been handed a gift in a way, and I'd really like to see you plan this with that in mind, that it is going to be a park and what you can do to make it a temporary parking lot and get in and get out as soon as possible. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening.
Good evening, council members. My name is Molly Ording, and I have served as the vice chairman of the Parking and Traffic Commission for, I think, the past 4 years, or since our inception, and prior to that on the Village Committee. As you well know, and James mentioned, the Parking and Traffic Commission has been really working hard on trying to solve Capitola's parking problems and congestion problems. And we have just been determined that we were going to be able to make some recommendations to you to create some solutions. We originally studied the option of the parking structure, but when the Lower Pack Cove area became available, we focused on that opportunity to temporarily solve Capitola's parking deficit, and also to have the opportunity to evaluate whether this temporary solution would in fact be a solution to Capitola's congestion and parking problems. So in addition to the obvious benefits of 226 more parking spaces for visitors and residents and employees to use, my particular passion in pursuing this parking issue has been that hopefully it will allow us to finally achieve this dream and this goal that many of us have had about relieving the Esplanade of cars temporarily, seasonally, daily, weekends, whatever, because it will finally mean that the Coastal Commission hopefully will allow us to remove cars from there and make it a very family-friendly, pedestrian, bike-friendly, and maximize that beautiful space and take it from being, it's a parking lot itself with just horrific congestion, and allow us to create that a beautiful space and see how that works for us all as a community. We've got a talented and enthusiastic group of volunteers, people in the community, merchants who are already willing to really work hard on coming back to you with some proposals about closing the Esplanade and making it car-free intermittently, and as soon as we see this temporary parking lot nearing its conclusion, then we're willing to jump into action and come back to you with some recommendations about how this might work and the best way to make it work for everybody. The other thing I just wanted to add is that in my long career as a parking person, one of the things that I have become aware of, and it's been extremely successful in other cities, is the smart parking, or the opportunity to install sensors in parking spaces so that people, when they're arriving in Capitola, can just simply look on their cell phone and see that there's 20 spaces in the Lower Pack Cove, or there's 200 in the Upper Pack Cove, and the rate is 50 cents an hour, and there's no spaces in the Esplanade, and there's, you know, it allows the city to opt to change the rates and adjust them seasonally or by area. And I think this is something that we should look into. I know all of the consultants who've studied the parking situation in Capitola have all recommended that in addition to creating additional parking spaces, we need to have a really efficient parking management system. So I think that's something that you would be well advised to look into as well. So thanks very much.
Thanks very much for your work on that committee. Good evening.
Good evening. I have a presentation that I guess is going to be coming up.
She's got a presentation.
Hello. Thank you, City Council members, Mayor, staff. My name is Kristen Jensen Sullivan, and I am a citizen of the good city of Capitola. And I would like to talk to you a little bit tonight. I really appreciate all the words that I've been hearing, and most of the words that I've been hearing tonight regarding the nature of the temporary lot. I do also have concerns about the temporary nature of the lot. And for most of you know me, I've been an educator, environmental educator for 26 years. I talk to my students a lot about sustainability. I've been on the GPAC for the last, has it been 2 or 3 years? I also serve as on the Commission on the Environment and have for the last 8 years. And one question I always ask my students, when we talk about sustainability and we talk about land use and where we should be developing and so forth, we always talk about what lives around us. And so what I've discovered, and I do hope this is, if it does become a temporary lot, that it is only temporary, and I really do have concerns about it because we have this beautiful place right around us. Just in the last week, I've walked out to the area in the lower Pacific Cove, and I've been examining the plants and the trees that have been out there, and I just wanted to show you a couple of things. Is there any way I can move through this as opposed to a self? A couple of things. Do you have a document camera? Andy, or did you get these? Are these up here?
Don't know. I didn't put these on.
Oh, okay. You have. Okay. So on the document camera, what you'll see in just a little bit is I want to show you just some observations that I've made out there in the last week, and the plants and the trees and so forth that I've seen out there. Just my own tallies. First, Steve, thank you so much for doing that. Steve is going to put up the tally of the plant species, the native plant species that I've seen out there. This is just taking a walk out there by myself for about an hour. And so I just want to show you a list of the plant species, the native plant species that I've been able to identify. There's about 23 or so species of trees and plants that I've been able to identify out there. 76 of which are individuals are the beautiful live oaks, and we have a lot out there, and I really hope that this is reverted to as much of a natural area as we can get, because another part of sustainability is thinking about our future generations. I hope you feel like I do, that our kids and our grandkids and our great-grandkids and our great-great-great-great-grandkids, 7 generations down the line, can actually be able to see things like you're seeing on the screen right now. There are, according to David Sudgen, who is a birding expert in our area, we're lucky to have him as a birding biologist, and he has calculated that out in this area there are 82 different species of birds that are out. And if Steve gets this up in a little bit, we'll show you. But 82 different species of birds. So what you're seeing up on the screen are some of the plants that I have seen. The birds that you're seeing are some of the birds that nest, that migrate through, that come through that beautiful area that we call Lower Pacific Cove. And so you can see the beautiful oaks that we have out there, and you can see a variety of different types of warblers that live out there. We have the red-tailed hawk that you see right here. A lot of really amazing birds, to the tune of, like I said, 82 species of those. So since that's not coming up, Steve, what I can do, is it coming up?
It is. Yeah, go ahead. So I'm not sure.
So yeah, you're not going to obviously be able to read this, but this comes from David Sudgen, and this is the 82 different species of birds that he's been able to identify out in that area that come through that area. As we know, it's part of the riparian corridor that feeds into Soquel Creek, the main stem of our watershed, our beautiful watershed where we live. So I know you can't see that, but I'd be happy to pass this on, email this to the city council members so you can see what's out there. And if you wouldn't mind putting the plant one on there as well, I'll email this as as well to City Council, so you can see the plants and trees that I've just gone out there and discovered just in an hour. So just going through the slides, I won't go through them again because I think you've seen them enough. But a lot of bird species, a lot of plant species. We have a beautiful asset right here. And I really think we'd be doing a shame to our future generations, present and future generations, if we didn't allow this beautiful area to happen. We don't have a lot in Capitola. I mean, we have a lot of beauty you see right around here on these beautiful paintings. We have a beautiful beach. We have a beautiful riparian area, but a lot of that is private. So having that area public, I'd love to see that. So if it does become a temporary lot, which I personally am opposed to, if it does become a temporary lot, I would really like to make sure that it gets set into a beautiful natural setting from there on. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Oh, I didn't play my bird sounds. I also recorded some bird sounds.
I thought you were going to do bird sounds for us. Wait a minute, you got to do the bird sounds. I mean, what's a council meeting without bird calls?
And I don't know if it's going to work. Can you hear them?
Mm-hmm. Yeah. You should lip sync.
I have
really
I have 7 minutes of bird sounds, but you probably are hearing my...
Kristen, I just want to know if you have the screeching owl on there. Because he makes a lot of noise.
I could try it. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Good evening.
Good evening. My name is Linda Hansen. I'm a resident of the Central Village, and I am a member of the Traffic and Parking Commission and also a member of GPAC. And, you know, there aren't too many things that you get 100% agreement on in your life, but I want to point out that the temporary parking lot has 100% support of the Traffic and Parking Committee, and when it was brought before GPAC, we got 100% of GPAC. Now, yes, we're talking about a temporary parking lot. Let me make it very clear, everyone on Traffic and Parking and the people that were on GPAC, we were very much concerned with it and wanting it to be a temporary lot. Then it can become natural area or can be made into whatever the citizens of Capitola decide they want it to be. But right now what we need is parking. We've been talking about the need for parking for decades. I saw in something that the museum issued a little comic that was like from 1960 or something like that, and it was this little comic about the need for parking in Capitola. I mean, it's been here for a very long time. It is my opinion that if we don't do the temporary lot, we will not get a permanent structure. As it has been pointed out by some people, we need temporary parking during the period that would be built. And quite frankly, the fact that this has been decades that we've been talking about this, unless we do something, we could be talking about this for decades to come. Now, all the people that are talking about being a temporary lot, and I know that Councilmember Norton is concerned about that, well, if we're all concerned enough about it being a temporary lot, then the citizens and City Council of Capitola can make sure it is a temporary lot. As far as the people that were talking about Proposition O and spending funds, not only have we, and believe me, James was right when he said, you know, that TNPC, Traffic and Parking Commission, have worked their butts off, quite frankly, and knows more than most. And in fact, under certain scenarios where we raise the parking meter fees in Pack Cove and in Lower Pack Cove, we could be contributing money to the city. So, you know, people that say this is going to be propo, you know, fees spent, not necessarily by any means. And if anyone would like to see any of those numbers, I invite you to come to a Traffic and Parking Committee commission meeting. So anyway, as far as whether it should be paved or not, I think if you want a shuttle going through there, and we believe on TNPC that that's an important piece of this, a shuttle that can bring people down to the beach and down to the village, you may need a little bit more than just, you may need paving. As far as the benefits of this to residents, I think there's a couple of them absolutely. residential permits. We can do nothing until we get some parking in the city about trying to get make changes in the residential permit program where people will be able to park on their streets. And I, like Molly, am very much interested in seeing us someday shut down at least part of the Esplanade. I think that would be absolutely a wonderful thing. I think it would be wonderful for the residents of Capitola. I think it would really, make it an inviting place, a more inviting place for visitors to come. I think it's a fabulous idea. And for me, who lives right down here on Riverview Avenue, if you're talking about environmental, I'd like to see a situation we are pretty much channeling all the cars over to the eventual parking structure, instead of watching them down here on the Esplanade, idling as they're trying to find a parking space. So I really think I am very much in favor of this being a temporary, and I totally agree temporary. Believe me, you will have Traffic and Parking Committee on your side trying to make sure this is kept temporary. That is what we want. We want to see a parking structure built, and I think if we don't approve the use of this as a temporary parking lot, it could very soon be revisited, and 5 years from now it could still be all chained off and look just like it does right now. Thank you.
Thanks for coming down.
I'm just picking up the pencil.
Good evening.
Good evening, council members. My name is Bob Henry, and first of all, I want to thank you for the job the council does here. I'm so grateful I live in this town. It's great. I just want to go off subject just a little bit ago. Somebody mentioned we'll be looking at this thing again in a few years. Over 50 years ago, I got together with James Redding and we went up to his place up there on Depot Hill, and we got Max Walden that designed Newtown in Los Gatos, and we had Al Palm, some artists in those times. We addressed the issue. It wasn't so much of a parking issue as much as it was a car issue, a traffic pattern. And the first thing he said was, you close down the Esplanade. But at that time, I mean, they were just, I guess they were too busy protesting the war or something. But it's something to think about, because when I walk around, I live right over here, and when I sit down in the corner there of Stockton there and Riverview on the bench there, I see those cars going around and around and around. I don't know what it takes, what kind of a designer to figure out where our traffic goes. But I still think that if they're going to be looking at this thing in 50 years ago, and hence that they're going to be looking at the same problems. I applaud the temporary issue. I think it's good. But what's more important is I think it's a people thing. We got to get them used to. I was up in San Francisco not too long ago, and I parked at North Beach. It was $10 for the first hour and $6 for every additional hour. How much did you say the parking meters were going to be up there?
50 cents.
Come on, you got to be kidding. I mean, people are going to come. You build it, they're going to come. You're giving it away. I mean, we're going to attract that more, many people. I think, again, though, you folks do such a great job. I'm just, I know three of you well, and you're a great group. Thank you.
Thanks a lot for coming. Good evening.
Good evening. Nobody's been signing in. Karen Hanna on the parking committee also. In answer to, where's all this traffic coming and the people who are circling, let us not forget that 65% of the cars that come into Capitola Village are passing through. And nothing is going to change that. Today, as I was, riding home on my bicycle, the traffic was backed up to Jade's 47th, whatever that is, by Jade Street. It has nothing to do with tourists or people who are a pain in the ass. Those are people who live around here and are passing through. A lot of the people who need parking in the village, those are the friends and neighbors of people who actually live in Capitola. They're the people who do the beach program, bring their kids down there. They're the people who come to the concerts. You ever try to find parking? You see people walking in from SoCal to the concerts, not because they want to, but because they can't park anywhere closer. So, you know, there's all this paint, you know, this is a big tourist situation. It's all for other people. It has nothing to do with the people who are going to be paying for it. It's all crap, because we all know parking is a huge cash cow for the city of Capitola, and I don't believe that the staff or anybody on the council really wants to lose that revenue. So closing the Esplanade and, you know, turning all the parking lots into parks is going to cost the city a lot of money. And yes, 50 cents an hour, that's not enough to charge up there. I mean, it either should be free, or let's increase it to a reasonable amount, which is 75 cents, half of what it is in the village, and there's going to be plenty of parking revenue at that point to pay the debt service. And not all this $1.4 million is just for the parking lot. A lot of it would have to take place anyway based on the needs of the city, and you know, parks aren't free. I mean, and the perfect example is the Rispin. We have to have open space. We have to have all this wonderful, you know, amenities for the people of Capitola. Well, it's just been a chain link fence. It's slightly more accessible now, you know, thanks to you guys doing what you did in the last year. But it's a classic example of this dream that, you know, Capitola is going to be this pristine countryside. And the reality is people are overbuilding their homes, they're cramming more people in, and, you know, it's just a reality. There are more people on Earth. This is not the Capitola of 60 years ago. This is the Capitola of today. And if you give most of the children and our grandchildren and our grandchildren's children and our 7 generations of children a choice of whether they want to go down to the beach and play or they want to play in the gully behind City Hall, what do you think they're going to say? So, you know, all that discussion of what we're going to do with it later, that's going to come later. Right now, the parking is a good idea. It pays for itself. It takes care of a big problem. It'll make the area look beautiful. And if there's a will, there's a way. And if there's going to be more parking above Pacific Cove, so be it. And then at that time, the city can figure out and the people can figure out what they want to put down there, skateboard park, dog park, whatever. But for the moment, all signs are pointing towards a temporary parking lot at Pacific Cove. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
How's it going? My name's Shad DeWitt. And so I was looking at the Pacific Cove lot, and it's just, and I see it as it's set up right now. It's an outrageous waste of our money. The stated cost is $1,400,000 for the project, and it's only 75% planned out. So the cost will go up. There are other costs that are not accounted for. The loan amount for this 20-year note is $1,750,000. I can't imagine we'd do a project that we're going to pay for 20 years but only use for 5. I mean, we don't build buildings and use them for 5 years and then tear them down and then keep paying for the loan for another 15 years. So if we look at it as only using it for 5 years, the cost is $350,000 a year for the 5 years it will be open. This lot is only needed for about 3 months out of the year, and not even all those days will it be fully utilized. The income for this we're talking about is $36,000 for these parking spaces, but we're going to put $90,000 worth of meters to meter this parking space. How much is it going to cost to maintain this lot at the suggested level? Please vote no on this, and I really appreciate Termini's thought of keeping it as temporary as possible, because it is a temporary parking lot. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Good evening.
Good evening.
Hello, my name is Marlena Dufresne. I'm a Capitola resident, and I'm here because I want to urge my city council to vote no on the estimated over $1 million estimated project and the scope that was presented. The number of spaces and the charges are not enough to pay for the project. Otherwise, there would be no loan required. And I just want to keep it short. I want to mention that Measure O, which was narrowly passed by the residents of the city, it's a burden for residents to pay, and this is another burden that I see coming for residents to pay. And I agree with the former speaker that the cost of the loan for something to pay to use as a temporary measure for 4 years and to have an outpay with interest accruing for a period of 20 years is ridiculous. I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't believe in spending more money than is necessary. I don't think that that much money is necessary for this project, even if it does go through. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Would anyone else like to speak? Good evening.
Yes, I have been here since around the 60s. I was one of those little kids who played in the gullies and everything. But then I have been working for the operating engineers, core drilling, and I really wonder about that because there are underground aquifers that we built over when I was in elementary school. All these trailer parks, and I wonder about the integrity of what we're putting over it. Yeah, because I see a lot of verbiage, as in temporary, as in sunset, but then, I think we really need to kind of go, or just think about, look what happened at Bells. I won't go any farther with that. But then I'll just say, there needs to be a hydrological, geological testing we do core samples of everywhere just to see the compaction, because if you're just doing a layover, what happens in the next storm? I'm a commercial fisherman by trade also on Pier 45 and then Embarcadero. I've seen the parking, but then I've seen the global effect. You've seen the storm that came over from the other side of the country. When I was in San Francisco, 1 foot, you saw 1 foot come in here. 1 foot's going to come up to 2 feet. Just recently in the Chronicle, the bankers are pulling out dough. This was happening over in Greece. It's just phenomenal. But then back to the parking lot. I just wonder about the integrity of the ground, and how much volume of water is going to be flowing out, and that's pretty much about it. Because I used to play in there, but then I see this riparian corridor. It's part of it. It's crap. Yeah, I see the pumping station. There used to be crawdads. We used to walk down. You get the surfers involved. We come right down through the river and see everything. We had bats coming up through everywhere. But all I want to see is just the right thing done, in the amount of time that we have. Because temporary isn't temporary, permanent isn't permanent. We're here once and make it last. But then this was a tourist town always, so.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to speak? Then I will close the public hearing. Any other last takers? Close the public hearing and bring it back to the council members. And who would like to start?
Sam, yeah.
Oh.
All right, go for it. Go, Sam.
You can defer to me, Mike? Thank you.
Yes, absolutely.
I guess I want to start by thanking Mr. Henry for giving us a compliment.
That's
It's wonderful. You know, and what a great opportunity for the residents of Capitola to really have this beautiful site to discuss and make decisions about how we will use it now and how we will use it in the future. And, you know, it seems to be a general consensus and that we need to have a temporary parking lot. The Coastal Commission tells us we need more parking. We all recognize it. It's one of the perennial issues. There are two good values at force here, and sometimes they create the most difficult decisions. But that is the need to try to control our traffic and parking in the community, and on the other hand, trying to preserve and have more open space for the residents of Capitola. So the choice and the first choice and decision is, are we going to attempt to use it as a parking lot, whether temporary or not, or are we just going to let it sit fallow, kind of like the Risman Mansion? And I think that most of us agree that we need to make some effort to increase our parking and to tackle that issue. And we can maybe have our cake and eat it too, because we may at some point in the future be able to turn this really beautiful piece of property into open space and parks of multiple types. And it's really up to us, the residents of Capitola, to fully determine what we will eventually do with it. So if we are going to have a temporary parking space, you know, then the next question is, well, how are we going to do that? Are we just going to slap something together and hope it holds up and hope it's suitable, and or are we going to do something that is a good project, a durable project, a pleasing project, and even if it is temporary? And I did want to reflect on that question of temporary, because I seem to hear a lot that people seem to think that whether or not it's temporary is dependent upon how much we spend on this particular project. I think I've been up here long enough to realize that that is not the case. And temporary, I've heard people throw out 3 years, 5 years, and I can probably surmise to you that it's going to probably take much longer than that, even with all the will and force of the Capitola residents trying to push it through open space, which I hope we do. But the temporary nature of that lot is dependent upon whether or not we build a larger structure that has a price tag probably starting at 10 times this, 14 million, and maybe going up to 18 to 20 million dollars. That's a tremendous challenge, one that we could probably do, but that challenge and whether or not we meet it, to me, is going to be mostly independent of what we do with this particular lot. And it seems to me that having this particular lot would eventually help us achieve our goals better, faster, than just trying to slap something together or not using it at all at this time. So with that, I'd have to say that I support the project as it's currently designed. The price tag, I know it's steep, but if we're going to do this project, we should do it with quality and pride. We should be something that we would want to have our visitors be safe in, be able to use, have a restroom to be able to go to, that it's well lit, and that we could direct them to this spot with pride and without any kind of concerns about their safety. I think that we should do it as well as we can. There was one speaker that spoke, though, that we should try to keep some vestiges of the aesthetics and some of the remnants there that maybe could be left behind. And I would hope that we could direct the staff to look at trying to maintain some of the certainly natural settings and also the human-made landscaping and artifacts and aesthetics that had been previously created. So again, it is something that's designed well and designed with, I think aesthetics in mind. The issue of paving and maybe not doing that, that's an intriguing concept, but it seems that we only save maybe $200,000, $300,000 by foregoing that. And when will it have to be replaced if we do nothing at this point? Would it be at a higher cost later? And then we're struggling with issues about should we put more money into it at some future date because we have not come up with the tremendous cost of building a parking structure. So I think this is a wonderful opportunity for us as residents to be able to move forward to, I think, potentially tackle two of our biggest and thorniest issues, which is parking and traffic, and then ultimately having more open space. And what a wonderful opportunity. Unfortunately, I won't be here to be able to realize that, but I'm certainly hoping that we can all work toward making this as temporary as we possibly can and creating really a space that all the residents can enjoy. But in the meantime, I'm going to support the project as presented and as approved by the Planning Commission and therefore deny the appeal. Thank you, Mayor.
Who would like to go next?
Thank you, Sam, for those words. I'm in an interesting position because, I'm new to this. I've been on the other side. And I remember when I was campaigning, I went out and I made promises about the things I was going to represent if I got elected. And, the hardest decision that you make up here is trying to get a feel of who you're representing. And the fact of the matter is whether I go to meetings or forums or is involved on the general plan, we truly only hear from about 3 or 4% of the public. And so the only reason I have to support any decision is the fact that in the election, there was an overwhelming result of people that voted for me, which means that they liked the ideas I had. And one of the ideas that I came very strongly out in support of was the temporary parking lot. And the reason I do that, there's been lots of terms that came up here, terms like, what do we do now, what do we do later? But I'll tell you what, I live in the village. I love living in the village and probably have to be insane to live in the village, okay, because it's a circulation, parking, traffic nightmare. I still love it, okay, but I can sympathize with some of the speakers that talked about, the congestion, and some people just want to drive through, take a peek at the ocean and leave. People pull up, park and look at the water for 20 minutes. They're going to continue to do that. People are going to come to this town. They're not going to go away. We charge a lot to park here, and we probably should charge more, as was brought up. But what they really want when they come here is they just want to get out of their car, and they can't do that. That's why they drive around. We're doing a disservice to sustainability, to the environment, by making them circulate around and around and pollute the village. So the solution to this is get them off the freeway, get them into a parking lot, but we have to provide parking. And to do that, it's an incremental step program. I believe that the parking structure is the ultimate solution. The structure is the way to stack the cars, use the least amount of land, which is valuable in this 2 square miles, and we can get the most amount of parking of that. The problem is it's going to be $18 to $20 million by the time we do that. And if we were in front of you right now suggesting a $20 million parking structure, I think the room would be a little bit more crowded. So I'm very comfortable with spending $1.4 million, and I'm afraid of spending any money like was spent in the Rispin and not doing it right. Because as I walk through that place, it's a liability hazard as it is right now because it was never finished. And if we have people walking through there, we're going to have problems. And if we create a substandard temporary parking lot, we will have the same problem. I walk through that park once a week. And someone mentioned, that one of the neighbors came and they said there's a feeling of sense. And I agree with her. You walk through there were people that lived there, there were lives, And I don't look at it like a regular parking lot. It actually is, it was a riverbed. It flows like a stream. And yeah, we're going to park cars in there, but you still get that experience. We're not going to tear out any of the trees. We're not going to, the birds have been living up there happily with the upper parking lot. I think that's why we got a negative declaration. We're not going to disturb what's going on there. And when I was on the parking commission and all the commissioners, I said this is my commitment. I said, if the best we do is cover over that parking lot and leave it like that for eternity, we have done a big disservice to this city. Because I agree with you all. It should be something more than that. But that's later. That's not now. Now we need to get the handcuffs off of the village. We cannot expand. We can never talk about having a village hotel until we provide extra parking. The things that came out of the general plan, the things I heard about solve the parking problem, build the hotel. Every time I come into this meeting, I look at the hotel that was there. That was there before any of us. And I want to put something like that back, because that's what makes this town unique. It made it unique in the early 1900s, and that's our challenge. And we got to do everything tactfully, gracefully, and do it in the proper order. It's the right job at the right time, and the right time is now for that temporary parking lot. You know, this is not a surprise. When I got on the parking commission 3 years ago, all I heard about was for 20 years how the city had been buying back coaches over a 20-year period with the intent of putting in parking down there. That was always the plan. It was never a new idea. This is not a new idea. But when we put that lot in there, we need to have a bathroom. Okay, we have to have this a good, I think as Councilman Story said, it has to be a good experience to people. Get off the freeway. Get into the parking lot. Go to the bathroom. Go to the shuttle stop. Go to the pay station and pay to park. Get on the trolley. Get down to the village. And you know, as people have said, if we ever have a plan to close the Esplanade or to provide some kind of unique experience, we have to provide parking. And can you imagine if we do go ahead and approve building a parking structure and we do have a hotel and we don't have a temporary parking lot, where are the cars going to go? They are already infiltrating the neighborhoods. You know, people say that this is not about the citizens, it's about the tourists. The tourists are going to park their cars. Every time we have the Art and Wine and the Begonia Festival, we see where those cars go. They end up sneaking into Depot Hill. They park all along Park Avenue. They go into the Riverview area. This is the ongoing problem. And the increased amount of parking, which has been the ongoing problem here for, somebody said 60 years, needs to be resolved now. The tragic event that occurred in Pack Cove gave us that property, and it gave us a simple, and I say this, fiscally responsible way to develop parking, solve the parking problem, and plan for the future. That's what we're trying to do right now, is plan for the future. The temporary parking problem, and it's temporary, and as Councilman Story said, I can't tell you if it's going to be 3 or 5 years. The thing I've learned right now is the wheels in Capitola move very slow. We have agencies like the Coastal Commission that dictate what we can and can't do. I think the main thing to do is to get people on board with the truth, tell them what our plan is, and then carry it out. And to that extent, you know, the money that we collected, I was a big supporter of Measure O, and I think everybody on this council is committed to using that Measure O money strictly for the road repairs and improvements as we promised. It's not going to go into supporting that. And the reason I brought up the slide when I challenged the costs and the revenues is that right now we have about $191,000 annually for the loan we borrowed to pay for relocating the people out of Pack Cove. And we're getting ready to borrow another 1.4 to put in this lot. And all of that debt service is going to come down to by the time, because it's going to be generated by parking. That's what's going to pay for most of it. It's going to come down to where the general fund is going to be impacted by about $80,000 or $90,000. And I question some of the numbers, and I think that, as was mentioned here, you know, I think Mr. Henry mentioned $10 to park in San Francisco, and it's 50 cents in Pack Cove. A nominal rate increase, which was suggested by the Parking Commission, could raise the rate enough to where all of the plans we're doing would be supported by parking dollars. Parking dollars go in, parking dollars go out. It does not affect the general fund. The citizens benefit. I was going to agree with Councilman Story. I will be supporting this project as it was listed.
Thank you very much. Who would like to go next?
I got it.
Okay, Mike.
Can I have a check-in on the rate for the Esplanade parking meters? What does it
Parking in
cost?
the village is $1.50 an hour.
on the Esplanade is $1.50 an hour. Did we not increase that for the summer?
It went from $1 to $1.50 in 2009.
Too cheap. Okay. I've done more studying about parking than I ever wanted to, actually. And it's interesting, nationally, the city street parking and the public parking lots, not counting driveways, not counting parking structures, we have in this country 3 to 4 parking spaces for every single car on the road today. Okay? And there's still no parking spaces on the Esplanade. So think about that. The goal that cities move to with setting their parking rates is that it be high enough that there always be a minimum of 10% open spaces at all times. We don't have that in the village. Okay? We need to get a little more bold on this. And I agree. Pack Cove, 50 cents an hour, ridiculous. It's just about, I believe, if we take into account all the costs, almost what it costs us to administrate that parking lot. It should be $1 an hour minimum. We would go positive with our parking revenue for this temporary lot. And I'm going to suggest not that we spend $1.4 million, but we spend a little more. I'd like to reduce the cost in the paving and push back a little on the stormwater requirements. Maybe we're being a little bit too conscientious and doing things in too much of a permanent fashion. I think we can stand on, no pun intended, firm ground when we say that we can resurface a lot of that and not incur the kind of drainage and infrastructure that we are going for right now. And I leave it up to Steve because there's no better public works director that I know of. I believe this will allow us to go to the next phase in the Esplanade, which is phase 2, which many of us are familiar with, where Esplanade Park is expanded out to include the Palm Tree Island. We haven't been able to remove those half a dozen parking spaces because the Coastal Commission won't let us. This will open that door for us. Okay, so it is a gradual taking back of the Esplanade from the automobile. I believe that the concern that having another parking lot will cause more traffic does not come from a place of knowledge necessarily, but of reaction. The more you park, the less the traffic is moving in the town, and we have to get them off the roads, and again, like Ed said, out of their cars. I have had, and if someone's balking at $2 or $2.50 an hour in the Esplanade and $1 in Pacific Cove, don't, because I've had countless people park in front of my house, look at the sign that says permit parking only, look to me if I'm in the front and say, how much is the ticket? I say $35, and they go, perfect, and walk to the beach. Okay? So if $35 to park for the day is cheap, $12 is really a bargain. And we provide a lot of relatively inexpensive parking for a lot of people who don't live here. I think this temporary parking lot will also allow us to expand the permit program that we have right now for employees in the village. Let's get the employees out of the streets. Cherry Avenue, Fanmar is just clogged with employees who are coming here to make a living. I mean, we have jobs on the Esplanade, in the restaurants, in the shops. Let's expand the program for free parking for employees in our parking structure. Getting our community room back, priceless, real bonus. I'd like to see, again, when I say paying more, spending a little more, I'd like to save in the paving, but I want to spend more by investing more in our parking pay station program. We are way past the time in history where we need a watchmaker going out there repairing hundreds of parking meters. Let it go. The parking meter's dead. Everybody's taking them out. Let's jump on the bandwagon. Let's also add pay by phone, please. This is one of the few communities where I can't take out my phone, punch the number of the parking space, and just pay for it. Done. And believe me, the number of times I've driven home from Santa Cruz, gotten into bed, and then heard my phone beep, and remember that I've been paying for parking for the last 6 hours because I forgot to stop it when I left the space, I'll make that donation to Santa Cruz, but we can get some donations too. There are many parts of this program that we will keep forever. There is a restroom in an eventual park. There are safe sidewalks in and out of Pacific Cove. And whether it's a parking structure or a parking lot, we need more of that. There are many, many things that we're going to garner from this project than throwing away $1.4 million. And I would only be voting for this, and I am voting for it, if we were net revenue neutral, expense neutral on the general fund because of Measure O. And making it $1 an hour, the entire Pacific Cove and the lower part, will bring us positive. Let's see, how many other fast things can I jump into? I don't know how to guarantee this is temporary. I don't know if we can effectively put a sunset into it. A scary thought, and it may come to pass, but in the land of slow-moving government, if that parking lot becomes a park in 10 years, it's a win. I know 10 years makes a lot of people shudder, but it'd be okay, because I think we may not want to say it personally and out loud with our inside voice. 3 years to a parking structure, it's never going to happen. 5 years, maybe. If we can get a council here in 5 years to pass a parking structure to begin the design and construction, we've won. This parking lot is part of that program. So there is no guarantee for temporary. And we could pass a sunset tomorrow, and future councils could make it go away. There's no guarantees. Nels, you've been around long enough. There's no guarantees. My apologies to Nels, by the way, because a long time ago we had a heated argument about, gee, why don't we sell Pacific Cove Mobile Home Park to the residents? And he shook his finger at me and he said, that's more important land than you think it is. And he was right. And we need to build the temporary parking lot, and we need to do it tonight, and we need to tell staff that they should pursue other parking measures that save us money and make us more money as part of this iBank loan, because this opportunity there's not going to be 2 bites of this apple. It's going to wind up being less than 2%, and we're going to wind up making money on this loan. And it's okay if we have a 20-year loan that's only lasts for 5 or 10 years, because remember what's going to replace that lower parking lot and continue paying that loan, assuming we don't pay it off early, and that is a parking structure with twice as many parking spaces as we have now, also getting revenue. So I'll leave it at that, and I'll let Dennis. And by the way, I'd love to see it be a park, sincerely. And I think that needs to be the ultimate goal. How we keep that memory alive over the next 10 years, I don't know.
I want to hear more about your keeping the surface like it was, Mike.
Well, I'm going to want to push Steve and say, I think that since it's an impervious surface area now, I don't think there's a problem, and I'm not interested in the parking spaces being pervious for ecological purposes, because right now there are no pervious surfaces there except the cracks between the paving. I think we could surface that whole place and fly in the face of stormwater requirements and say, it's always been impervious and it still is, and there's just cars on it now.
Thanks. How many people here have had the opportunity to walk through Pacific Cove in the last 2 months? Can we see hands? It becomes a more majestic experience, the more trailers that are removed from there. And I never realized the real beauty of that piece of land right there. Besides Soquel Creek, the riparian corridor, I don't think there's anything within our city limits that compares to it. And when you walk back there, it's quiet, it's peaceful. It's actually a pleasant experience this time with nobody living back there. I'm sure people who did live there enjoyed it at that time. And looking at a value for a community as to resolving a physical problem such as parking and circulation as compared to resolving a lack of parks problem that we have in our community. And we did hear that from our consultant last month, that we're deficient in not in open space but in parkland. Physically, it's located, it's surrounded completely by residential areas. It's located right in the middle of our community. We have no parks in the middle of Capitola. We're going to lose Jade Street eventually, or at least a major portion of that. We have Monterey Park, which we share with the school district, and we'll continue to share it. And so, looking at the values of the people who live in our community, and I'm not talking about the tourists that come here. I'm not talking about the village needs. I'm talking about the people who live here first. And what are their needs? Is their needs a temporary resolution in and a parking problem in their neighborhood, or is it to the tranquility and the quality of life that you get with open space or a park in your community? And so I would say that that the park really marches forward in my mind. And if you're going to spend $1.4 million, you could spend $1.4 million on a park, or you could spend $1.4 million on a parking garage. And believe me, this parking garage or the parking spaces down there don't even come close to paying for what it's going to cost you. Your loan won't be paid off for at least 20 years, and you won't have it that long. So it sounds, I've heard two things from the community as they came up and spoke, and also from the Parking and Circulation Committee and the GPAC, is that they want this to be a temporary facility. They're telling this council, and I've heard from every person that came up here, I don't think without exception, that if it's going to be put into a parking lot, that make it a temporary thing. So if I'm going to go along with turning this park into a parking lot, I need some safeguards here written into this agreement that show me that there's a sincere commitment from this council at this time, and maybe they won't be the one to make the decision, but also from this community, that they can follow through and say, you know what, council, no matter who you are up here, the city committed to these type of conditions, and I'm going to read you some conditions that I think should be added in here. There should be this is a conditional use permit, so we can put conditions as to review of that conditional use permit. And the first one is that we should have a 2.5 and a 5-year review by the council. Number 2 is one of the purposes that I hear that we're by building this, we're going to relieve congestion and traffic in the village. And by the way, I've never seen anybody walk up this upper parking lot, walk into the neighborhoods, walk down to the village. That's where they go. But that if you do that, then we need a commitment from the village itself that says that we need to turn the Esplanade back over to the people who pay for it down there. And so there should be certain days that it becomes a community use in that Esplanade street. And so the first day would be October 6th, which is the first Sunday in October. We plan a street closing day, and we see how it works. This is a demonstration project. And then if we see that it's working and has possibilities, that we schedule for that following summer, that one day a month we close the Esplanade. The Lower Pacific Cove has no reason to be open when we don't need it. In other words, close it down that 120 days a year that the upper lot's not going to fill up. It cuts down on maintenance, it cuts down on usage, and the meter boxes, everything that you do is centralized into the upper lot, and it should stay that way. So close it down, have it gated, so the city has a choice when there's going to be a sunny day or when there's going to be a special event, that they can open the gates up and use it then. That we direct staff to move forward immediately on a package that's going to move forward towards a multi-story parking structure. The city also should consider forming a parking district in the village, such as City of Santa Cruz. City of Santa Cruz, the property owners there pay for the parking garages. It isn't the general public. The people over on 46th Avenue shouldn't be paying for the parking garage in the village. And I do agree with the theory on increasing fees in the village. I think that you need to discourage people and make it real expensive for people to park down there. So increase the fees in the village and keep the ones up here at a reasonable level, because if you don't keep these at a reasonable level, they will be parking in our neighborhood again. They won't even go to this parking garage. They'll be parking up on Sunset and Riverview. So, I think that we need to reduce the overall cost of this project. And one way to do that, right now we can get $200 off the top of this thing. If you pull the AC paving off, And this is done, parking lots like this are done in a lot of places without that AC, with just the permeable turf block. It's done all over the country right now, and they work fine. And we're reducing this thing by 200,000 right from the start. So we need to pull the AC out of the present proposal.
How does that work, though, with shuttle buses and garbage trucks and things like that that are heavy and going to use it a lot?
It still works for them. They're made to take any kind of traffic. You know, even if we get some indentation, what you do, you base rock and bring base rock in, and you fill those things over a period of time. Remember, don't forget, we're talking temporary here. This is not a permanent structure. And so let's don't go heads over heels investing in the Mercedes here. Let's keep it to a point where we'll want to get out of this. And the only one way we're not, if we invest too much in this project here, we're never going to want to get out. It makes it too difficult for it to do it. So right away, I think this project should be able to come in under $1 million and get what you want and serve the public, and you'll still get the same parking number of spaces that you have there. And I would like to see those conditions added to if a motion's made for approval on this project. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I know a lot of people have put a lot of time and effort into it, and I sure appreciate it. We have been talking about this for a long time. When Kathy Malloy was the planning director here, and she counted spaces in the village, and we got the report from the Coastal Commission that we were deficient, and we didn't really have a plan of what to do, but we talked about more parking. And then when we talked about increasing perhaps businesses in the village, we couldn't do that because they couldn't provide any more parking, but we did let a few businesses have a few more tables and chairs and to just help them out and kind of look the other way. So I was kind of skeptical about this in the beginning because that upper lot is not packed most of the time. It's not filled most of the time. But I am supportive of this now because what this gives us is some flexibility for the village, for residents, for special events, for just in general, as Ed said, for the future. And I think we're all concerned about the cost of this, but it kind of costs what it costs. And if there's anything else we can do to tighten those costs, we will do it, and we'll know when we get actual bids for these things what they're going to cost. And if it's too much, we'll be back here talking about it. One thing I would really like is after we approve the project and get started on it and have a final project, we take a break from parking for about 6 months, because we've been talking about this for a long, long time. And we don't know how temporary it's going to be. We don't know if we're going to have a multi-story parking structure because we need a partner. We don't have a partner right now. So we're waiting for a partner, that business in the village, that maybe it's a hotel, maybe something else, because I don't think most of the residents of Capitola are going to want to support a $18 or $20 million project for that area unless we have a partner. So we certainly need that. But I think it does bring benefits to residents. They have a place to park because they might want to come down on Begonia Festival and drive because they can't walk and bring grandkids or whatever, and this will give them more opportunities to find that parking place so they can come down to the village and enjoy the Begonia Festival and the Art and Wine Festival and things like that. So, a lot of locals don't come down in the summer because there's not, unless they ride their bike or they walk because there isn't enough parking. So this will be used by residents too, I think. So I'm open to a lot of the ideas that Dennis listed. Certainly a review is appropriate. Certainly experimenting with street closing for part of the afternoon is appropriate. I don't want to plan for a multi-story structure right now because we don't have a partner. As soon as we get one, then we can certainly do that. And I'm open to looking at increasing fees in the village, but we don't want to make it so high also that turns people off and they'll go to somewhere else, another location. We still want it to be a affordable place. So, but in concept, I support it. I think bathrooms are necessary, good lighting is necessary, and I think we should do, as Sam said, a quality job.
Go ahead. I'd like to go ahead and try to make a motion based on the input.
Yeah, Daddy.
Unless you...
I just have a question about, and this is just for John, regarding the form, and that is, I think that because of the actions before us tonight, things like parking structure, parking district, and street day need to be separately agendized items. Are we able to fold it into this? Because I don't see where we have that much wiggle room on just those three things.
You can direct staff to come back with those items as part of your motion.
We can direct them to come back as part of the motion, but we couldn't say
You can't establish.
we can't establish a parking district with this motion.
There's all kinds of hearing requirements that go along
Yeah.
with that.
Okay, now I'm trying to help you because I know where you're headed.
Let's don't forget this is a use permit. So we can add conditions of approval. Right?
Right, but the condition would only be that they would come back.
Okay.
With those
We can't
issues.
establish a parking district with our condition of approval.
I understand. Okay.
Just one question before I formulate this motion. That is, can the denial of the appeal be part of the motion, or does that need to be done separately?
Well, it sounds to me that you're going to make a modification to the conditional use permit. So my suggestion would be that you deal with the negative declaration first. That you make a motion to certify the negative declaration, and that you want to approve the conditional use permit with the added condition that it be reviewed in 2.5 years and 5 years, if you want to include that. And that with the added condition that staff look into a plan for closing the Esplanade, and look into a plan for I would say how the parking lot's going to be operated to address sort of Dennis's issues.
All right, just for clarification, these are the items that Dennis brought up that I tend to like, and I'm going to incorporate those into the two. First, I'm going to make the first motion, but I just want to tell you where I'm feeling, and that is I'd like to review the project in 4 years, okay, and then every 4 years after that, because I think, as Mike mentioned, realistically, nothing's going to happen in 2.5 years, okay, we know that. I think in 4 years, we could be ready to take another look at this, and then if it happens every 4 years after that.
But you're assuring that nobody's going to be on the council?
Stephanie's always going to be here, okay? One thing I've learned is that Stephanie will always be here. Okay?
And Ron Graves will be here, so I think we're covered.
Okay? So we're okay. I can't predict who's going to be here. I can only do what I think makes sense for right now, and realistically, to say something here that I know doesn't make any sense, I can't say 2 years. 4 years, I think, is a good period to review. So I'd like to go with the number 4. I do support, the attempts to close the Esplanade, and we'll put that in another motion to attempt to do that. I think it's a great idea. The trials are great. I think the gates on the project are great because it doesn't need to be a drive-through and a nuisance. And by putting the gates on there, we can have all kinds of events down there. We can have, they can sell produce down there. We can do things down there in that setting because it is a great setting. And so I'm in favor of the gates. The user fees, I'm a dead set against. I don't want to start a rivalry where I'm pitting 41st Avenue people, because if I tell all the people on 41st Avenue that I want to put a skate park in Monterey Park, they're going to say, yeah, go ahead and put it there. So I don't want to start neighborhood rivalry. Okay, I think that we just need to make the decisions here that we think are best for the city. I don't want to lift up the AC. I want the AC for the fire trucks, for the garbage trucks, for the shuttle. I think the improvements we make with the water storage, although they may seem like a lot now, we will never have to go back and redo that when we tear up that asphalt and we put in a skate park or a dog park. All those improvements are there with the water runoff. We will never go back to that issue. And aside from that, that's the motion that I'd like to make.
Okay, I'm going to let you finish, then I'm going to ask you to change it. A little bit, tiny bit.
No, go now.
I was going to say, with regard to paving, if we could direct staff to work to shave $200,000 off, it may mean that we pave where we have pervious paving, we have base rock now. Because I think the base rock parking spaces, the pervious parking spaces, may have kicked in extra money above and beyond what it would be if it were just paved. Is that possible?
It's more drainage costs, Mike.
I don't know. I think we're doing drainage. Steve, you alluded to that at one point way back when we were planning this.
Can you rephrase that or say that again? I didn't quite follow.
Are the pervious parking spaces increasing the cost over and above just AC paving? Period.
No, what we are mitigating with the pervious pavement is the impervious roadway.
So we're saving money with the pervious parking spaces?
Correct.
Okay, and I guess my question is, would you let us push you a little bit with a staff direction to try and, use the areas that are paved now, maybe with resurfacing, and not have a lot of extra drainage kicking? I think we're being too careful with the way this is being built with regard to stormwater runoff.
So you say increasing the AC paving?
No, I'm saying leave it.
Huh?
Leave the AC paving, but the AC paving that you show on there, the lighter portions are all pervious.
Mm-hmm.
And if that's saving us and helping us percolate water, that's great. It's not more expensive. I misunderstood you at one point in time. I thought the pervious parking spaces were costing us more than just paving. So I'm seeing a lot of areas, most of them are paved now. I want to see if we can, I want to push you a little bit on the stormwater improvements to see why we need excessive drainage and runoff and storage when we have a effectively paved parking lot right now.
And that will be part of your actions when you talk about the parking lot itself, not the plan.
Right, I think that's what we're talking about now, but I know that another motion is going to come ahead of it with regard to the negative deck. So we're just talking about the second motion.
You know what? I had a long talk with Steve, and this is an area that I have a little bit of knowledge in, and I think that if I understood the conversation today, Steve, and that is, we can't pave any more of that because the more we pave, the more we have to mitigate water. And we run out, and the cost to mitigate the water is the expensive part. So the object is to put, as Dennis would love, as little asphalt as is necessary. And that, I believe, is what the plan you have up there. I think
Correct.
The plan was, because there's even part of the roadway that is not paved. Okay, just because we needed the extra collection, that area right there. It's not a solid pave. So I mean, I would like to pave more, but to pave more, we would have to increase the water.
No, what I'm questioning is the increase in cost above our original estimate because of stormwater, and we are opening more of the lot up than has ever been opened. Therefore, I think we're being too careful in our interpretation of the stormwater requirements. We are not paving anything that isn't paved right now. That's the bottom line. If it's brand new paving, all well and good. But I think that we need to step back and reconsider the way we're interpreting the requirements for the stormwater runoff. Once again, we're opening more of it up than has ever been opened.
Right. So you want a condition in there that the Public Works Director is going to work with Zone 5, which he needs to get a permit from, to try and reduce the amount of stormwater work that needs to be done based on existing impervious surface.
And while we're at it, tell Zone 5 we don't want to pay them anything because they don't do anything. Okay.
Can I make one suggestion as a member? Is that, this is not our trade by any of us up here. Okay. Number one. Number two is that it's become a common practice to just use the permeable areas in full parking lots. And it's been successful. Can we not ask somebody who does this kind of business to come and talk to us? Just say, is this going to hold up under these conditions in this thing? Is that if we can get someone who guarantees that, who will stand up here and tell us that, is that not the way we'd like to go and take the AC out of it? Then we reduce the cost of this project by $200,000.
Even without being paving masters, I know for a fact that the difference between leaving paving in and taking paving out is it costs you money to take paving out and to put another surface in there of one kind or another. So what I'm leaning towards is leave the paving in where the paving is going to go, resurface it, and tell Zone 5 it's always been that way, get away from us.
You're talking about the existing road that's in there now?
Yes. I'm saying if we overlay, first of all, this whole area right now is impervious in one way or another. So what I'm saying is we are leaving what's impervious and maybe resurface it. Everything that's pervious that we're opening up now is just a bonus. And that has to cost us less than all of the drainage and grading that is in the bid. Maybe not, but Steve is shaking his head and moaning, so I don't know. I'm going to go back to Ed.
We can get carried away here. I had a great conversation with Steve, and I think Steve's up there. He's going to want me to defend his position here. I'm going to try to do that. I understand the concept of if there is a miscalculation about how much was covered over, and we can get credit for that's covered. Much like if we go to build a parking structure and we say, we don't need to deal with water runoff up there because it was already completely covered, and the footprint we're putting it on is the same footprint, so we don't have to do it. That's the logic that I believe you're trying to impose. And if we can say that, if there's a miscalculation, or we get credit for asphalt and pads and say, wait a minute, we actually are covering less with impervious material than was before. And I'm sure that our public works director will try to do that, okay?
I'm there with you.
Okay.
I
think
we're
the thing is,
confused on this thing.
No, we are confused because I'm going to go.
We're not asking to pay anything in for ground that we're covered. What we're doing is we're putting a new project, and there's difference in elevations. And what you're doing, what they're looking at is saying, for this much asphalt, you need this much drainage. That's the calculation. It doesn't matter what's there to them.
Maybe not, and I don't know. I can't say that. Maybe not. So what I do know is that I like this project. I believe I have support for this project. What I'm really afraid of is not doing this project right. I think when we started this temporary, we started with Steve and we said 6 inches of base rock. No, we want 4 inches of base rock. No, 1.5 inches asphalt. No, it's, you know what? Let's do it right. I don't want to come back here because I'm with Mike. I'm afraid of how long it's going to take us to get this temporary. I want it to go away, Dennis, believe me. But it's not going to happen in 4 years. It's going to be a little bit longer. And what I would really be remiss in doing right now is making a motion for a project that I think is going to fail. I think what we all want to know is that the road is going to last. When the garbage trucks come through there, it's going to work. So the motion is going to...
We need a motion to deny the appeal.
That's what I'm going to do right now.
I think that, as I mentioned, you're changing the conditional use permit, which you were allowed to do on the appeal by adding some additional conditions. So I think the first motion you want to make is to certify the negative declaration, and then we can move into the others. Or I can make it all in one.
The first motion will be to deny the appeal and to certify the negative declaration and to review the project every 4 years.
Okay.
Second.
Discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
And the second motion is to approve the project as presented by Public Works, existing 1.370. Is that the number?
Well, the figure's going to come back to us after we get bids.
You know, the project as presented, when it's fine-tuned, I would like to see with the following additions. One is additional numbers for additional pay stations to complete the village.
Okay.
Two.
Do you want to include Cliff Avenue on?
And Cliff Avenue.
Or Cliff Drive, I'm sorry.
Cliff Drive, yeah. Cliff Drive in the village, additional number for that. Two is the installation of gates on the property and the ability to
So could I suggest that you want staff to look into opportunities for closing the lower parking lot when it's appropriate to do that? You might want bollards, not gates, so people can walk through.
I'd like staff to look into opportunities to closing it selectively.
At will.
Okay.
At will.
And you're going to ask staff to come back with an overall review of parking fees in all of the village area, including the parking lot?
Absolutely.
And you want to ask staff to come back and look into opportunities for closing the Esplanade and I would like to say for some experimental closing of the Esplanade, because if you use that wording, you don't need a coastal permit for doing those experiments.
That's exactly the wording we'd like to use.
Okay.
No,
I think that you have it.
What? I didn't like the parking district.
Oh, well, the parking district is a mechanism where people can develop in the village, like stores or restaurants or whatever, and instead of having able to provide parking in the village, they give us money towards the parking structure, which we have available parking places now.
So
Would you go into a little bit on the park?
Is this like an in lieu fee that we were leaning towards?
Yeah.
So you could add a condition in there that staff would return back with a plan for considering a parking district. Does that work for you, Jamie?
I'm hearing in lieu fee and parking district.
Are they the same or are they different?
There's confusion. Maybe I'm confused.
Parking district and or an in lieu fee.
A parking district I think of as having local businesses or property owners pay into a regional pool to pay for remote parking. In lieu fee is basically a city program that we can take in money and developers can provide their parking off-site in a city lot.
I think I'm more interested in an in-lieu fee than a parking district, personally.
Well, if you gave the direction for us to
Look into both for council to evaluate.
Make us smarter, please.
Absolutely. Look into both. Give us the information. Absolutely. Look into both.
And the in-lieu fee at this time is a very important thing for us to move forward if we're going to move forward with the project, because once the parking lot is there, it becomes very difficult later to say to the Coastal Commission, we have extra spaces we're going to sell.
No,
we really want to identify that at the front end.
I think it should be presented for us to review both of those options.
And I will second that.
Any other discussion, comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Before the vote, I'm sorry. So what we're voting on is just item 9A, right? We're not voting on...
No, we just did 9A.
We already voted on 9A.
That was item 9B.
That was 9, okay. I vote no on this one.
Okay. Thank you very much.
Does the motion include authorization to go to bid?
Yes.
So we just increased the budget.
Thank you.
What the budget that was proposed, we increased it to add parking meters.
Potentially. They still have to come back to us.
Ask them to look into it. Right now, we've already approved. All we approved right now is what was presented.
With direction to try and save on...
And the motion implies that we're giving the Public Works Department the authority to go out to bid. Is that all right with the motion?
Absolutely.
Baker in the second?
Yeah,
okay.
Correct.
I want to be real clear about what we have. We weren't planning on returning with this project to the council. So what you're asking for is for us to...
Well, wouldn't the final I-Bank come back to us?
No, this is the authorization for the I-Bank, unless it exceeds 2.5%, at which point we'd be coming back to the council.
Well, we'd like to see, I think we're hearing that we'd like to see bumping this up slightly to maybe encompass other parking improvements such as more pay stations.
Well, the pay stations we do have a price on, right?
We expanded that to the rest of the village.
The number too.
Okay, yeah, and so defining what that number is. And that, I think we can do that still within our timelines for the I-Bank and everything else.
Yes, I believe so. We would just need to get I-Bank's approval on the scope of the project because it's slightly a change.
Okay.
Okay, good work, everybody. Thank you very much. That was a big step forward. Thanks, everybody in the audience for coming. The last item is item C, consideration of a coastal plan and ordinance amendment to the Capitola Municipal Code, Chapter 17.39, regarding planned development district regulations. Unless people want to take a quick break now.
I'm good.
Let's push through.
Okay.
This is a quickie.
Okay.
I think so.
I hope so. Yeah.
Good evening, Mayor and Council members. In February, you received a draft ordinance revision that had been prepared by the city attorney regarding planned developments within the city of Capitola. And the purpose of the ordinance revisions was to allow planned developments to be an appealable item to the city council. This item was taken to the Planning Commission at their meeting in March 7th, and the Planning Commission unanimously voted to recommend to you that the ordinance go forward and that you approve it. Yeah.
Was that a unanimous vote, or was it a 3-1?
I thought that it was a unanimous vote. There was one member of the Planning Commission who asked for some amendments that weren't accepted, but in the end I thought he voted for it. But I could be mistaken on that.
Ruth voted against it. I read that. Okay, either way.
Yeah. Okay, are there other introductory comments?
No, I'm happy to answer any questions.
Any questions? Then this is a public hearing. Would anyone like to speak on this topic? And we'll close the public hearing and bring it back to the council. Who'd like to start?
I would like to move the staff recommendation, and this is just a brilliant process. Really, it was uncomfortable at the beginning. We had concerns. It went to the Planning Commission, our very excellent Planning Commission. They discussed it. I love the recommendations and the way it was worded, and well done. Everything works as it should.
I'll second.
Was that a motion, Mike?
Yeah, I made a motion to staff to move the staff.
Other comments? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Motion carries. Thank you very much. The next item are council treasurer comments. Are there any comments from the treasurer?
I would like to just kind of circle back on the process. I didn't have an opportunity to speak to you about the projects that you just voted on, kind of move through.
Sorry.
And so I would like to circle back, although it's not going to have any impact at this point. I was really impressed with the community turnout this evening, and I thought that they carefully worded their positions and appealed to the council in the best manner that they could. It was very polite and cordial. I did hear that they were looking for a temporary proposal. I also did hear that they did not want you to spend the $1.4 million, and that, there were a couple people that were like, yeah, go, but I say when we hear that you hear from 3 to 4%, if you're comparing that with who turned out today, it was a larger representative saying not to spend so much. And I did also like the suggestions that came up to increase parking fees. I think that we really need to take a look at that. One of the things that resonated for me is possibly those parking fees, the extra parking fees, could be dedicated towards the cost of a permanent structure or the cost of the open space. So to maybe try to find a way at some point in time to evaluate those fees and really put them to where the public wants their money spent. I really liked Councilmember Termini's suggestion about the permanent items, the bathrooms remaining permanent, walkways remaining permanent. These were ways to actually reduce the overall cost of the project if you separated them out. Let's see, and I also did like, I can't remember who mentioned it, but less usage, actually I think it was Councilmember Norton, less usage of the space by closing it off could actually extend the life of the project and allow us to reduce some costs but actually have it last longer. One of the things I did want to comment on is increases in fees in the village. While overall I really like that concept because it is a great place to park and it is a great place to be, and it is worth the increased fees. As a resident who likes to shop in the village, I can tell you that it will probably drive down my shopping because oftentimes I'll be off to a birthday party or off to an event and I'll swing into my favorite boutique and grab an item. I'm not going to be able to do that. I'm going to have to bring my bike or park and walk, and when I don't have that extra time, it's not there. So I have no idea how we might propose something that could increase fees in the village certain days, possibly. I have no idea how we could do that, but also try to find a way to keep it friendly for residents who want to shop at their local stores. I love the local shops here. So anyway, those were my comments.
Thank you very much. Any other council comments? Staff comments? Thank you all very much. You did a great job tonight. We are adjourned.
This is
because I wanted to make it irresistible. I wanted you to say, what have I got to lose? $12 a month. You know, look at your bank statement. There are charges on there that are way more than $12 a month, and you don't